Newsworks in cooperation with Eau Claire County. This program is simulcast on WRFP-LP 101.9 FM.
It is now 7 o'clock. I call to order this regular meeting of the Eau Claire County Board of Supervisors on this Tuesday, September the 15th. First, we'll have the honoring of the flag. Supervisor Bates will hold up the flag, followed by a moment of reflection by Supervisor Leary. Together, please. I pledge
allegiance to the flag
of
the United
States of
America
and to the
the Republic
for which it stands,
stands
one nation,
under
God,
indivisible,
with liberty
and
justice
all.
for all.
Supervisor Leary.
Thank you. Opportunity tonight, I thought it would be appropriate to take and remember those who gave their lives on 9/11 and to have a moment of silence both for them and our soldiers and those who have given their lives since that time. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Leary. Would you please call the roll?
Supervisor Gibson? I did see that he's on, so I'm going to consider him present. McKinney? Thank you. McKinney?
Present.
Knight?
Here.
Pagonis?
Here.
Anton? Zook?
Here.
Chilson?
Here.
Stelgis? I saw him on. Okay. Stelgis, or I'm sorry, Maury?
Here.
Coffee?
Here.
Henning? Bates? Supervisor Bates?
Here.
Thank you. Supervisor Russell?
Here.
Gatlin?
Present.
Smyer?
Here.
Hanvick Boyle?
Here. Here.
Neiman?
Here.
Dunning?
Here.
Wilkie?
Here.
Anderson?
Present.
Beckfield? Supervisor Beckfield?
I'm here.
Thank you. Leary?
Here.
DeLuca?
Here.
Jansen? Was that Jansen?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. And Schroffnagel? Roberts?
Here.
Kronk?
Here.
Thank you. And Christofferson?
Present.
Thank you. There is 26 present. Who I have absent is Anton, Henning, and Schroffnagel.
You did not call my name, but you knew I was here, Schneider.
Oh, yeah, I did check you. Sorry.
Thank you. So we have 27.
26 present.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda is approval of the Journal of Proceedings from August the 8th, 2020. Motion. We'll do this by voice. Motion. I have a motion.
I'll make a motion, Supervisor Cronk.
By Cronk.
Second.
Who was that? Who was the second there?
Supervisor
Martha Neiman.
Supervisor Neiman, thank you. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to the Journal of Proceedings? All right. Here and now, we'll proceed.
Chair Smyer,
Yes, sir.
I just got a call from Supervisor Henning and Altoona. He's having trouble getting on. Samantha, can you help him?
I'm sorry. Did you say you could help him?
Can someone help
Oh,
him?
someone.
Dave Hayden will be able to help.
Thank you, Supervisor Becker. So I hear no additions, deletions, or corrections. All those in favor of approving the Journal of Proceedings, August the 18th, please unmute first of all. Please say aye.
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 All those opposed by nay. I hear no nay. It is unanimous. Thank you very much. Next is public comment. Before we go into the public comment, we're going to have to make a slight adjustment because of the number of comments. So I've asked Clerk Loomis to group together the comments that are almost identical or very close to being identical, indicate who made the comments so they're represented. And then we'll do some of the others separately. We're not going to exceed the 30-minute limit that we set for ourselves or the 3-minute limit per comment. So Clerk Loomis, you're muted.
First of all, we got 3 people that are going to speak. The first one be Kayla Rick.
Is she on?
Samantha.
Give me 1 second.
Hi, this is Kayla. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, thank you. I didn't quite understand if things were grouped together differently. Am I just able to speak, or am I supposed to be waiting for some other direction?
We're waiting for you to speak. Thank you. Are you still there?
Yes, I am still here.
Okay, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I see on your agenda under item 8 that you will discuss the investigation of the health department. I strongly support that you continue this investigation. On a somewhat related note, as I'm sure you know, the Eau Claire Board of Health heard public comments on a new amendment to the Communicable Disease Ordinance last night, which will soon be on your agenda. In response to all of the opposition and questions from citizens, the board discussed whether this provided any additional authority or additional money to the health department. They concluded that it did not. I ask you to be diligent in looking at this ordinance and considering those same questions, because the information provided with the ordinance that we were asking about clearly states that the ordinance is to solve the problem of enforceability. If this provides no additional power, how does it solve the problem to enforce it? It also states in the ordinance that individuals and businesses can be fined, and businesses can also be ordered to be closed. This is not a current power that the health department has through the state mandate. It is enforceable at the individual level at this point and not at entity level. That also is something that the health department doesn't currently have the authority to do unless a business is licensed through them. Fining is also in the words, and that certainly has the potential to be a great source of revenue for the health department. What would that money be used for? This also in some ways seems to be targeting businesses, small businesses that are already hurting. Please start reading the ordinance before it comes to your meeting in October. We also need to reinstate the right to assemble and give in-person public comment regarding this ordinance at your meeting and at the city council meeting. The technology is certainly a barrier for public comment, and I'm sure for you all as well. And it does not do an adequate job in allowing the public to comment and participate as usual as allowed by the open meeting law. Thank you very much for your time and your consideration on this extremely important matter.
Thank you. Samantha, who's next?
The next one to speak is Jason Richards.
Here, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Jason Richards, and I am speaking on behalf of myself and my wife, Amber Richards. We reside at 4111 Meadowood Drive here in the city of Eau Claire. First, we would like to thank all of the board members for the countless hours you spend each month ensuring our county is run as efficiently and smoothly as possible. This is a daunting job, and we appreciate all of your hard work. We are calling tonight to voice our support of Resolution 20-21-061, authorizing forensic audit of the finances of the Eau Claire County Department of Human Services. In the private work sector, employees, teams, and ultimately managers are in charge of making sure their staff remain productive and that they operate each year within a specific budget. These budgets are typically drafted by the very department themselves, so they should have a pretty good idea of what their spending will be for the fiscal year. If the company or department goes over budget, especially if a high dollar amount, the department manager likely will face executives or board members and have to give an account for their overspending. If they cannot account for where the funds were spent and by whom, they are penalized or even fired. Those working with taxpayer dollars are not excluded from this type of accountability. In fact, I expect there to be even more oversight, more accountability, and stricter consequences for government employees since they are trusted with hard-earned taxpayer dollars and are required to adhere to budgets as close as possible. In referencing the fact sheet for this resolution, it is astounding at how over budget the Human Services Department has operated. What is even more terrifying is the accounting error of $1.2 million. In any private sector business, this type of misspending and management of a department would be considered grounds for an investigation and be labeled corrupt. These levels of discrepancies are beyond acceptable. Here we are literally 24 hours after the health board is asking us to trust them and allow them to pass an amendment to the Communicable Disease Ordinance, of which they went ahead and voted on regardless of the opposition, saying it will provide oversight and accountability while handing over essential rights to an unelected official. How can we trust anything coming from the Department of Human Services when they operate over budget by $7.5 million and continue to operate with accounting errors and discrepancy with little to no public attention? Yet they continue to control our county's population with fear and manipulated data. We are asking that you please vote yes and authorize this audit, expedite it, and hold people accountable for their fiscal negligence. Thank you for your time.
The next speaker is Elma Koenig.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you for taking my call. And I second everything that I think it was Jason Richards said. I fully support an audit of the Eau Claire County Department of Human Services Department. And I'm looking at the papers, and all I can think is, why is the chairman of the board trying to stop this investigation? And Mr. Richards did a much better job that I could do because he was very clear. We need this investigation. And I would like to know why he's trying to stop it. I would like an explanation because I know people on the county and I know some of them have been furloughed with the excuse of COVID-19. Well, as we can see, COVID-19 was way after this overspending has been happening. And I also saw that since then, they have been hiring 70 more people. So it just doesn't make sense. And I'm a numbers person. I like numbers. So this doesn't make sense to me. And I really would like to fully support this audit. And that's all I have to say. Thank you for taking your time.
Okay, that's the end of the people that would like to speak. I have 3 that I need to read because they're different than the majority of them that kind of said the same thing. The first one is from Roger and Peg Garvok. They state, we would like to offer our full support for a forensic audit of the DHS department. We are concerned about the misuse of funds at the Department of Human Services in Eau Claire County. We are also very concerned that this county is trying to pass an ordinance to have a broader control of 100,000 citizens of the county when the finances are in question. Thank you for attending to their concerns. The next one is from Terry Galogos. And they say, I'm against the health ordinance being proposed. We don't need any more control or the government telling us what to do. We are tired of our rights being taken away, no longer slowly, but very quickly. We are all smart adults and know how to be safe, I'm sure they meant. And if we are sick, we are smart enough to stay home. The third one is from Jan Steiner. I would like to make a statement read on behalf at the upcoming county board meeting during the open hearing segment of the meeting. I understand they will be dealing with file number 2021-062. My name is Jan Steiner. My address is 3351 West Haven Court, Eau Claire, Wisconsin, 54701. I'm submitting a statement to be read during the open hearing at the county board. The purpose of her statement relates to file number 62 for a forensic audit of the DHS. My name is Jan Steiner. Although retired for 9 years, I was employed by Eau Claire County for 38 years, most of them as a department head. Budget overages are nothing new in DHS. Although I have no evidence available to me to accurately pinpoint specifics, the problem with DHS accountability goes back much farther than the years cited in the resolution. Parenthesis, which are all years since my retirement, end parenthesis. DHS never seemed to play by the same rules that other departments adhere to. Like DHS, my agency also received reimbursements of state and federal monies, although in such smaller varieties and quantity than the DHS. But I always knew how much had been received and how much was still expected in a fiscal year. DHS's inability to accurately calculate their bottom line is inexcusable. I'm amazed that there are 20 employees in their fiscal unit. County residents deserve in all accounting of taxpayer dollars. Continually tapping into the general fund to correct errors or oversights should not be tolerated, nor should weak procedures that follow the employee theft. I am not insensitive to the increased demand for foster care and other DHS services resulting from things such as the methamphetamine crisis, but a forensic audit is past due to identify and correct obvious problems in the department. I encourage passage of file 2021-062 and a resulting complete report to the county taxpayers of the audit results. Then we have 26 comments, some from couples and some from individuals, but basically this is a statement from all of those 26. I support approval for a forensic audit for the ongoing theft and criminal investigation of the DHS. And that's the end of the public comment. I'm sorry, I should read the names of who they came from. Joshua and Bethy Aberly, Ed Akala, Emily Elishke, Aaron Arfstrom, Rachel Arfstrom, Randy and Judith Burdell, Bob Carr, Carol A. Cox, Kevin DeCook, Dawn Gerzowski, Dan Green, Patty Green, Hoff, Pamela Johnson, Jim Koenig, Jane Loudon, Carol Mastig, Linda Mastig, Dory Pulse, Amy Rath, Sarah Van Gore, Benjamin Van Gore, Michelle Vanderhyde, Kathleen Wonke, Lori Worth, and David and Sally Winter. And that's the end of the public comment.
Thank you. And Samantha, you have nothing else, correct?
I had nothing else.
Thank you. Okay, we will move on now to item number 6, reports to the county board under 2.04.320. First, oral report from the county administrator staff on the COVID-19 task force.
Chair Smyer, can I just mention something first? As far as roll call, Henning and Schroffnagel are being added to the roll call.
Thank you. We have 28 then.
That is correct.
Thank you. Administrator Schaaf.
Thank you and good evening. The COVID-19 task force has not met recently. They will actually be meeting tomorrow. And part of what they will be considering and looking at are a number of metrics that we are gathering for Eau Claire County, the state of Wisconsin, and our nation in response to what has been happening with the COVID-19 pandemic from an economic standpoint. We will actually be taking all of that information and compiling it in an executive summary and a dashboard format for the entire board. That is not available yet this evening. One of the things that we do know is that Norb Kirk and his team have continued to work through their projections, and the current estimate is a $1.4 million shortfall in funds as being considered the median of the best case to worst case scenarios for funding for the county. We continue to be diligent and watch that as we continue our mitigation strategy. That is all I have this evening, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the administrator?
It was in the other one.
I'm sorry, was that someone requesting?
I have a request.
Please.
This is Nancy Coffey.
Supervisor Coffey, go ahead.
Catherine, would you comment on the audit that was done, or will you wait until we get to the forensic audit resolution to give that information?
I can wait until the resolution if that is what the chair desires, and then Norb Kirk, who is our finance director, is also available to comment on that because he has been working with the Department of Human Services and others. So
okay.
So Supervisor Coffey, I assume that your question and your comments have to do with the resolution regarding forensic audit.
Correct.
All right, let's wait until that comes up onto the floor.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone else with a question for the administrator? I hear and see no requests. Thank you. You have in your file the written reports, the 2020 Contingency Fund Report, the August 2020 payments over $10,000, are the last two items in the reports. Are there any questions about those items? I hear no requests. We'll move on to presentation of petitions, claims, and communications. We have two rezoning requests. The first one from Jeffrey and Bonalyn Goss, the town of Washington. That will go on to our next agenda, our next meeting agenda. And a rezoning request from Helga and Rachel Vestas from the town of Pleasant Valley. That will also go on to our next board meeting. Next item is item 8, first reading of ordinances by committees. This is the Committee on Human Resources.
File number 72 to amend section 2.09.005A of the code, legal holidays, and to amend section 2.09.010A of the code, business hours.
Motion.
This is first reading, sir.
Oh, right. Thank you. Sorry. This goes on to second reading. Development file 59.
This ordinance makes changes to section 15 of the Eau Claire County Code, buildings and construction.
Okay. It's a rather long, this is a little bit out of order, but I'm going to ask Committee on Planning and Development, Supervisor Gibson, if you're here, just briefly say what this is, because there are a lot of words.
Well, basically, this is going to come back to the next meeting. This is only the first reading.
Right. I was trying to
Here we go through and we look at all the permitting fees, construction fees, everything else for any type of construction, and we adjust those fees accordingly. The department has been doing a very good job of monitoring like how much time they spend on them. We made that request several years ago, and they've been following it quite closely.
Okay, thank you. I was just trying to prepare the supervisors for the second reading. Next, from the Committee on Finance and Budget, file 67.
This ordinance changes fees in Section 4 of the Eau Claire County Code.
Thank you. Chair Pagonis, would you, because this is a long section here, would you briefly tell us what it's about?
It's basically the annual relook at the fees that we're charging, and it's going to be before finance and budget next week. So we haven't actually reviewed it yet, but every year when fee changes are proposed, they come to finance and budget, and that's what these are, fee amendments.
Okay, thank you. We have no items under item number 9. Item number 10, reports of standing committees, commissions, and boards under 2.04.160, and second reading of ordinances. First, from the Committee on Administration and the Committee on Finance and the Budget. This particular file, it comes out of the task force that received the direction from the board in our last meeting. This comes to us as an amendment to the ordinance. So this would be first reading, and we will take this up in our next board meeting. Thank you. From the Committee on Administration, file 55.
To amend Section 2.04.010B of the Code, Rule 1, Meetings, and to amend Section 2.04.310B of the Code, Rule 31, Committee Meetings.
I'm going to ask the Corp Counsel just briefly to say what this is. Corp Counsel.
Thank you. Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Thank you. What this is an amendment to 2 sections of the code related to holding, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. To holding meetings by virtual means. Right now, the code, as it reads, states that all meetings shall be held in the County Board of Supervisors chambers of the courthouse unless otherwise ordered by the board. Section B of 2.0401, what we're doing is asking that the additional language be added, and notwithstanding the above, the chair of the county board in response to the COVID-19 pandemic and through April 22nd of 2022, which is essentially the term of this current board, shall have the authority to authorize meetings to be held remotely, either at another location or by electronic means that include appearance of members by video conference or by teleconference. And then section B of 2.04.3.10, essentially what that is saying is that the committees can also hold their meetings remotely if under the prior section that I just mentioned, there's approval by the County Board of Supervisors chair to hold meetings remotely by video conference or teleconference. What it is, it's reflecting the fact that at the present time, we no longer have an emergency order, emergency declaration in place, and we have some sort of legislation on the books that authorize video conference and teleconferences for meetings.
Thank you. This file will come to our next meeting. I'm sorry, there seems to be a lot of background noise. This will go to our next meeting. Next is from the Highway Committee, file number 58.
To amend Section 10.01.080 of the Code, County Highway H.
Supervisor Henning, could you briefly tell us what this is? Are you there? Or any member of that committee?
This is Judy Gatlin.
Thank you.
Speak.
Go ahead.
I'm embarrassed to tell you that I don't remember where County Highway H is, which small city, but it's changing the speed limit. Instead of going from 55 miles an hour down to 25, they have changing it so there's a transition from 55, I believe, to 35 to 25 going through resident.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next, from the Committee on Planning Development, file 50. Now, I've had a request.
Chair Smyer?
Yes.
Ordinance 58, this is the second time it was on the agenda. It wasn't on last time. So we should have a motion and an action.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, I didn't read that correctly.
And Chair Swire, I believe that 55 also previously are second readings. They're both marked as second on the agenda.
Okay, my apologies. We'll go back to file number 55. We'll look for a motion on that.
Supervisor Beckfield so moves.
Beckfield moves, second.
Seconded by Supervisor Leary.
Second by Supervisor Leary. Explanation. Well, we've already had the explanation, I think. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to this ordinance? I do requests, so we will take a vote on this now. This is file number 55, amending section 4.10B of the Code, Rule 1 Meetings to amend section 2.04 of the Code, Rule 31 Committee Meetings. All those in favor of the ordinance, please indicate by saying aye.
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 I notice some of you are not, you're still muted.
Okay.
Supervisor Bates, I assume you voted aye.
I did. Aye.
Okay. Those opposed by nay?
Nay.
We have one nay, and that is 27 yes. Is that correct, Clerk Loomis?
Without an actual roll call vote, the chair should just decide whether it would pass or not.
Okay, my decision is that it is passed. Okay. File number 58, the ordinance to amend section 10.01.080 of the Code, County Highway H.
Henning would like to move for approval, and I was muted at the time of your request for me to speak, and the speed limit was changed, as Judy said, and it was requested by everybody involved, all the way from Black Creek Lodge up north of Fairchild down to the village, and everybody was in favor of it. So I move approval.
Okay, could we have a second, please?
Seconded by Supervisor Gatlin.
Supervisor Gatlin seconds. We've had the explanation from Supervisor Henning. Are there any questions, any discussion regarding this file, this ordinance? I hear none. All those in favor of the ordinance indicate by saying, and first of all, unmute. Supervisor Bates, I'm watching you. Thank you. All those in favor of the ordinance, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed by nay. The chair considers that a unanimous decision. From the Committee on Planning and Development, in our agenda packet, file number 50 comes next. I have had a request, I think it's coming from Planning and Development, to withdraw this file from the agenda.
Supervisor Schmeier.
Who is that?
This is Supervisor Gibson.
Oh, Supervisor Gibson. Yes, please.
Yes, I spoke with Rod today, and the request from Rod was to postpone this, not withdraw it.
Oh, okay.
Because the township has asked, some of the public wanted to speak some more on this, so they are going to allow time for them to do that. So this would be postponed. What we need is a motion to postpone this until our October meeting.
So the proper motion would be postponed to a time definite and give the date. So the chair looks for a motion to postpone to a date certain. October, what is our first meeting? October 5th?
October 6th.
6th.
This is Supervisor Dunning. I move that we postpone to October 6th.
Thank you.
I'll second that motion. Supervisor Mowry.
Supervisor Mowry seconds. We have I think here. This is second reading also, correct?
All these that are coming up.
Correct.
Yeah, I'm just noticing the numbers, the number 2 down here. Okay. All those in favor of file 50, amending the 1982 official zoning boundary map for the town of Brunswick, The motion to postpone to time definite, please say aye.
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 All right, thank you. Those opposed by nay. This is now postponed to our meeting of October 6th. Next on our agenda is file 51.
Amending the 1982 official zoning district boundary map for the town of Clear Creek.
This is second reading, so motion
Judy Gatlin, motion.
moved by Supervisor Gatlin, second by
Supervisor Cronk.
Supervisor Cronk. Thank you. Explanation, Supervisor Gibson.
Thank you. This rezone request is to rezone 5.6 acres of non-tillable land from AP Agriculture District to A2 District to allow the applicant to sell the property to construct a single-family residence and a pole shed. The Eau Claire Comprehensive Plan includes the property in the rural lands planning area, and the town of Clear Creek also includes the property in the rural preservation planning area. Staff's conclusions were the staff finds that the proposed rezoning request substantially conforms with the Eau Claire County Comprehensive Plan. The town of Clear Creek considered this rezoning petition and they recommended approval 3-0. The Eau Claire County Planning and Development conducted their required public hearing, and on the vote of 5-0, the committee recommends approval.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or is there any discussion regarding this file? This ordinance.
Yes, Stelgis.
Supervisor Stelgis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So it has been some time since I've expressed concern about rezoning. And there were a couple on the agenda tonight that I wanted to comment on. My overarching concern when we do these rezones is that we continue to fragment our rural lands. And there are generally, reasons that are expressed why it makes sense to do that. But the net effect is that we continue to fragment. And as in this case stated, while I'm sure the people are well-intended and I have nothing against them, basically we're rezoning this so that they can make their property more valuable. So in my view, we are trading our zoning, which I sort of view as a public interest. We're trading that public interest or giving it away so that the owner of the property can fragment their property and sell it for a higher price by subdividing. And, when we look at them one at a time, it doesn't seem like a big deal, but over time, it happens again and again and again and again, and we become more fragmented. So I do have a lot of concern about that. I wish two things. One, that when we do something like this, that the public gets something in return. If we're going to give up the zoning, and the owners of these properties certainly knew what the zoning was, and most people pay no attention to that until they want to sell, but they should. And I wish that when we make these trade-offs, that we in the public get something in return. Secondly, I would think that both the townships and our Committee on Planning and Development might be getting a little weary of all these rezoning requests, and maybe we never see the ones that are rejected. I don't know how many, if any, are rejected. So I would like, at some point in time, maybe an annual report from the office to tell us how many of these requests fail at the township level and how many fail at the committee level, so that we have some idea that there's actually some more scrutiny going on. So with that, no prejudice against the owners, I'm going to vote against this. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other comment on file 51? Any other comment?
Yes, Chairman Smyer, I think I have my hands up.
I'm sorry, Supervisor Pecounis. Sorry. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I just want to say, you know, in looking at the fact sheet, it indicates that this is less than 6 acres of non-tillable land that somehow got placed into the agricultural preservation district. It probably shouldn't have been in there in the first place, and it would be moved to agricultural residential. So, you know, maybe from a zoning point of view, maybe different care needs to be taken. But if this is non-tillable, it's not as though we are removing it from agricultural operations, because it indicates that it's really not part of the agricultural land. So you know, all due respect to Supervisor Stelgis, I understand his point of view, but doesn't make sense to me to force property owners who have non-tillable land to keep it within agricultural preservation. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak?
Yeah, this is Supervisor Gibson. I'd like to make a little comment because,
Please go ahead.
you know, Stella brings up a very good point. When the state classifies these different districts and stuff, like, you know, for instance, AP agriculture, they look at 40-acre parcels. Okay, they don't break it down based on soils that are in there. When it comes down to a rezoning request, that's one of the things that the Planning and Development Department looks at. They also look at what the town, because town has home rule, and that's why back in 2000 these comprehensive plans were created. It was created because it allows the towns to look at the areas of their townships along with the county as to how these lands and areas need to be treated.
Is there anyone else who wishes to offer comment or ask a question?
This is Nancy Coffey. I have a clarification.
Supervisor Coffey.
I think that Gary can help me with this. As I understood, Town of Clear Creek was not as organized at the time that this was also zoned. So part of that zoning might be because of that. Gary, can you help with that explanation?
I guess I'm trying to understand what you're asking, Nancy.
Well, if not all the towns that were organized at the same time, correct, as far as zoning?
Well, zoning, if they're a zone township, it falls under the county zoning. I think the biggest key here is comprehensive planning.
Okay.
Okay, because that was required by the state back in the year 2000. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, some town, in fact, all the zone townships worked with the county, along with the county, to write these comprehensive plans. Probably 14, 15 years ago.
Okay.
So, you know, each of the townships, I mean, even several of the unzoned townships actually, even though they don't fall under county zoning, have their own comprehensive plans that they have put together and have had approved. So I think that's what you're that's what you're asking, Nancy.
That's exactly what I'm asking. So that helps them guide in their decisions. So
exactly.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to file 51?
This is Supervisor Mowry.
Supervisor Mowry.
I just have a question. A comprehensive plan that's been in existence for 20 years might be, is there any plan to revisit it or update it?
Yes.
It seems like
it's required.
Supervisor Stelgis would have, input into that process in terms of seeing increasing fragmentation of rural lands.
Supervisor Mowry, sorry about that. It's required by the state. They have to update their comprehensive plans every 10 years.
So are they in the process of doing that this year?
I think a lot of them started on, I think, last year, even some of them the year before.
I think most are done.
Yeah. The county just updated theirs last year also to meet that 10-year requirement.
Supervisor Maury?
Well, I'm still wondering if Supervisor Stelge's concern was addressed during that update or the updates.
Well, yeah, if I can answer that, Don,
Yes, please.
I wasn't involved in this township. I am well aware that the townships update theirs. For example, town of Washington, where I live, I did participate in that process. But back to my comment, most people pay little attention to this until the time comes that they actually want to do something with their property. And, that's just the hard facts of it.
Well, actually, they do pay attention to it because once that thought comes to their mind, they have to make application for it, which they pay fees for, which they work with the planning development department to go over all the codes, both state and county, to make sure that they are following all the regulations.
Sure, understood. Once they start the process, they do.
Yep, and as a property owner, it is their right to do whatever they feel like doing with their property, as long as it meets county code and state code.
Thank you. Is there any other comment, any other question on this file 51? I hear none. So, supervisors, we will proceed to a vote. File 51, amending the 1982 official zoning district boundary map for the town of Clear Creek. Please unmute. All those in favor of approval of file 51 indicate by saying aye.
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 Those opposed by nay.
Nay.
We have one nay. The chair rules that this file is passed. And we will proceed next to file 52.
Amending the 1982 zoning district boundary map for the town of Union.
Motion.
So move, Bates.
So a move by Supervisor Bates, second.
Gatlin.
Supervisor Gatlin, seconds. Explanation, Supervisor Gibson.
Yes, this request was to rezone 4 acres from rural homes to the A2 agriculture residential to divide an existing home and outbuildings and additional property purchased from the property owner to the west to create a 5-acre lot for the applicant to reside and operate an existing building contracting business as a cottage industry. And then divide the second existing home and adjacent property on 1-acre lot and 1 acre from A2 residential to RH, rural homes, to create 4 additional 1-acre lots in the north and south of the second existing home as depicted as the applicant on the plat that was the applicant's plat. The Eau Claire counties and the town of Union's land use maps both include property in the rural transition planning areas, and the town of Union's comprehensive plan includes the property in the rural transition areas. Staff finds that the proposed rezoning report substantially conforms with the Eau Claire County Comprehensive Plan. The town of Union considered this rezoning request at their meeting and recommended approval. And the Eau Claire County Committee on Planning and Development conducted their required public hearing on this. And on a vote of 5-0, the committee recommends approval.
Thank you. Are there any questions or is there any discussion on file 52? I hear no request to speak. Therefore, supervisors, we will vote on file 52. All those in favor of approving file 52, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Those opposed by nay.
Nay.
We have one nay. The chair rules that this has passed. Next is file 53.
Amending the 1982 official zoning district boundary map for the town of Brunswick.
Motion by Leary,
Thank you, Supervisor Leary. Second,
Backfield.
Supervisor Beckfield, seconds. That's back to you, Supervisor Gibson.
Okay, this request was to rezone 2.3 acres to A1 exclusive agriculture to I1. Non-sewered industrial to divide the existing industrial development and text plot. Note that the total parcel size is 6.14, and a portion of the parcel is already I1. Okay, this also the Eau Claire County and the town of Brunswick's comprehensive plans, future land use, both include the subject property in the rural industrial planning area. Staff finds that the proposed rezoning request substantially conforms with the Eau Claire County's comprehensive plan. The town of Brunswick considered the rezoning petition and recommended approval of the rezoning to I1. The town board did not recommend approval of the proposed Lot 2 zoning, which in that case, because towns have home rule, just so everybody understands, when they vote against something, the county cannot overrule them. The Eau Claire County's Planning and Development conducted our required public hearing regarding this proposed rezoning and voted 5-0 in favor and recommended approval of this rezoning from A1 to I1.
I have a question. Does the reconsideration or that action when the township rejected part of the application, does that affect this ordinance that we have in front of us?
That's part of it.
It is, okay.
Yep, one part of it is approved. The second part was not allowed, so
okay.
There was no need for a vote on it because the town has home rule.
Thank you. Is there any discussion or any questions on this file?
Yes, Stelgis, I have a question.
Supervisor Stelgis.
So just, are we only voting on Lot 1 then?
That is correct.
And you said part of this property was already zoned for industrial, and I know this is the gravel pit down there. What part is already zoned industrial?
I'd have to look at the map. If it was already zoned I1, it's not going to change.
Right. So that's why I don't understand the comment. If something's already zoned I1, why are we changing anything?
No, there's 2.3 acres that is in the A1 agriculture. And that's the part that they're rezoning to the I1. 2.3 acres.
2.3 of the 6.14?
That is correct.
So the remainder of the 6.14 is already zoned industrial?
No. I'm trying to find the map here.
It's not the gravel pit, it's the Pioneer Seed property on Cemetery Road. And there is a...
Correct.
Correct. If you look at page 70, Kevin, I think that might help you. It says summary of the rezone request near the bottom of page 70. Rezone approximately 2.3 acres from A1 district to I1 district to divide the existing commercial development and rezone approximately 9.23 acres from A1 to A2.
Yeah, well, I don't want to drag this out. I just don't fully understand. So Lot 2 remains as it is. That's unchanged. And we did a bunch of other rezoning along this area just over the last couple months, but whatever.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Soltis. Supervisor
Schneider with a question.
Supervisor Schneider.
Do they still want it even though they can't have all of it the way they want it?
Well, they might still want it, but it ain't going to happen. The town has already voted it down.
So why are we voting? I guess I'm not understanding why we vote if it can't happen.
I believe we're voting a lot.
We're just yes. we're not. We're
Can
not
I
voting
speak
on
up?
the part.
Who's asking to speak?
Sorry, this is Matt Michaels, Senior Planner with Eau Claire County.
Without objection, Mr. Michaels.
All right. So subsequent to the town of Brunswick's vote on this item, the applicant, their representative, Pete Gartman, actually did contact us to let us know that the applicant would be amenable to the modified recommendation, meaning they want to go forward with lot 1 as is. Of course, they would like lot 2, but they understand, the dynamic that they can't get that. So given that, rather than withdraw the whole item, they'd rather go forward with lot 1. We did not formally amend that request because we try to keep what was submitted to us and advertised to the public and through our hearing, we want to keep that whole, if you will. But I can attest that the applicant is amenable to the vote before you to rezone lot 1 only.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to file 53? I hear none. Supervisors, we will proceed to vote on file 53. All those in favor of file 53, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Supervisor Bates.
Weird.
Okay. All those opposed by nay. The item passes, and we move on to file 57.
To amend section, amending the 1982 official zoning district boundary map for the town of Washington. On your agenda, it says town of Brunswick, but it's really town of Washington.
Thank you for the correction. Motion.
Okay. This request was to rezone 5.2 acres.
Supervisor Gibson, hold on.
What?
Beckfield so moves.
We have a motion by Supervisor Beckfield.
Second, McKinney.
Second by McKinney. Thank you. Supervisor Gibson.
I thought you'd already said it, but
that's okay.
Okay, this request was to rezone 5.2 acres of land from the A2 agriculture to the rural homes district to divide the property into two 2.6 acre parcels. The Eau Claire County and the town of Washington's land use maps both include the property in the rural residential planning area. Staff finds that the proposed rezoning request substantially conforms with the Eau Claire County's comprehensive plan, and the town of Washington's board considered this at their meeting and voted 5-0 in favor. Eau Claire County's planning and development, we conducted our required public hearing and voted 4-0 in favor of recommending approval.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Is there any discussion regarding file 57? I hear none. Supervisors will proceed to a vote on file 57. All those in favor of file 57, please unmute first and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. Those opposed by nay?
Nay.
We have one nay. The chair rules that this item passes. Next from the Committee on Finance and Budget, file number 45.
Approval of 2020 gifts, grants, and/or donations to Eau Claire County.
Motion.
Beckfield moves.
Beckfield moves. Second?
Troutnagel.
Troutnagel seconds. Thank you. Explanation, Supervisor Pagonis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So these are 5 grants and donations that have come in so far this year. Obviously, a big one as part of the state contract from the ADRC. All of these amounts have been received, and this is a bookkeeping item so that we adjust the budget to reflect that these amounts have been received. These are typically grants that we apply for, and there's an expectation and a requirement that the funds will be spent according to the grant application. So I urge your approval.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Are there any questions about this file? I hear none. Supervisors will proceed to vote on file 45. All those in favor of approving file 45, please indicate by saying, first of all, unmute. Indicate your approval by saying aye.
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 All those opposed by nay. I hear no nays. This item passes. Next is file 61.
Chair Smyer.
Sorry.
Chair Smyer.
Supervisor.
I was wondering if it would at all be possible to move 069 about the filling of the fiscal associate 3 position up here before we deal with the forensic audit.
I'm quite sure I'll respond to that. I'll do it by asking, is there any objection to doing that? Because then I can say without objection. Okay, without objection, we'll next consider, it was file 69. It was file 69.
File 69 is authorizing the filling of the 1 FTE Fiscal Associate 3 position in the Finance Department.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Wilkie.
You're intervening before the motion. Is that intentional?
Well, yes, it's a question, clarification. Is this going to be acted on this evening, or do we need to take it up under suspension of rule?
I think if this is a resolution, I believe we can take action tonight. Is that correct, Council?
Sorry, I couldn't find unmute on my computer. If it's already been acted on by a committee, yes, you can take it up.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Motion, please, on this.
I would move approval.
Was that
By Larry.
Was that Supervisor Wilkie first?
Yes.
Thank you. And second by Supervisor Leary? Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Explanation, Supervisor Pagonis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will defer to Supervisor Wilkie. This was his resolution, and he drafted the fact sheet, so I think he would be the more appropriate person to speak to it.
Thank you. Supervisor Wilkie.
Be happy to speak to it, but just one correction. I didn't do the fact sheet. Our administrator did, but I certainly concur with the fact sheet. I'm glad we can take this up this evening, and we're taking it up before the resolution 61. So on the front end, I want to make sure that it is understood this is not by any means intended to replace or be a substitute or be adequate to replace that resolution. So if the thought process was going that direction, I would not agree with that. What this resolution is doing is taking a a staff position that was placed on hold through the bridge plan. And of course, if it's placed on hold by the bridge plan, the governing committee is required to bring before you for consideration to be able to fill that position. What this is doing is asking you to fill that position. It's a lower level position. It's not a hybrid accountant, as I'll call them in kind terms, good bean counters, okay? But it does do important tasks like payroll, etc. With that position not currently filled, we have 2 high-level fiscal staff having to pick up that 40 hours a week doing that job. Obviously, that's not good fiscal from the standpoint of having your higher level and higher paid, understandably so, folks doing that job. The point of wanting to fill this is so that we can give back that time to those high level people to aid in guidance and consultation. A driving force behind it, quite clearly through the resolution, is to help on matters with DHS, wanting to see us take a step forward with a constructive effort. Not that it's going to fix everything, but not only just with DHS, it's with all department heads. These are employees that provide consultation and guidance to the departments. We're experiencing a pandemic right now, and we've all had very much on our mind what the fiscal impact is going to be or not going to be, how that can change up or down. And though it's only going to add a couple months because it's planned to try to move forward with it in 21, I think those couple months getting that position, lower level position filled, freeing up time for your higher level people to help out and be available for consultation with DHS and for all the other departments. The committee reviewed this resolution and on a unanimous vote of 5-0 is recommending your approval.
Thank you. Is there any question? Supervisor Schneider.
I think when we talked about another position coming off of Bridge, we thought there was a fiscal impact, and this one, didn't it say a 0 impact? How does that work?
I might be able to answer that, Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry?
I might be able to answer that.
Okay. Give it a shot.
Okay. With this one, it's clearly budgeted for, and that department is on budget. They're not having the challenges in DHS. By no means has the same challenges, whereas in DHS, they are currently, not nearly to the degree that they had in the past, struggling being over budget. And they're using that as a means to try those positions that are being held open as a means to get back on budget. So that is where I see the difference as far as there's no fiscal impact with this. The money is there. Now, we won't be saving that small amount of money for those couple months with this lower level position, but we don't anticipate they're going to go over budget in the finance department.
Supervisor Schneider, is that acceptable to you?
Seems like money spent is money spent, whether it's a little bit or a lot, but I certainly think it's a worthy position.
Thank you.
Chairman Schmeier, I have my hand up. If I could just respond quickly.
I'm sorry, I can't see hands up. All I can see is the lower part of Supervisor Bowery's face right now. So there you go.
I just want to respond briefly.
Supervisor Pagonis, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Supervisor Wilkie is correct. The difference is that this position was already budgeted for. It was part of the 2020 budget. It's an existing position. The human services position is a new position, and so that represents a pretty substantial difference.
It wasn't.
There's
Excuse me. Let Supervisor Pagonis finish. Do not interrupt.
the position had not been previously in, it was introduced as a new position for 2020. It was not an existing position. It was introduced in the budget book in 2020 as a new position.
Thank you. I see, now I have the hands in front of me. I see Supervisor Gatlin, Supervisor DeLuca, and Supervisor Stelchus with hand up. So I will begin with Supervisor Gatlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I support this position, specifically when we do designate in line 31 that as well as other departments in the county. However, line number 19 and 20, I do not agree with. I look at that as opinion and not fact, because my perception is not that DHS is in disarray. So that doesn't speak for me. So I don't know what others feel about it, but I'm not sure I'm going to vote for it with those two lines in there. Thank you.
I neglected to indicate Supervisor Coffey also had her hand up. So I will go next to Supervisor DeLuca, followed by Supervisor Coffey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The explanation helped me out on this. I was thinking that they would be able to help with this reorganization in human services. If it is going to, this position will take care of the daily activity and allow the other two that are capable of assisting at a higher level with human services. I will support this.
Thank you. Supervisor, did I call on Supervisor Coffey?
Not yet. May I speak?
Yes, please. I'm trying to keep the hands straight here. Sorry.
Thank you so much. So I'd like to ask a clarifying question for the big picture, and I'd like to ask Norb this question, if I may. And that is the question of, if we hire this fiscal associate position in the finance department, does Norb think that we also need the position that was unanimously proposed by the DHS board for the DHS operators administrator, so that we can think big picture about how these positions might work together?
Director Kirk, without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, they're dramatically, obviously, different positions, right? The DHS position is more of I would view it as more of a program position that would, I think, help support the, I guess, interaction, if you will, between the programs and the fiscal unit within the DHS. At least that's my perspective on the position. So I think it's kind of more operational in nature. I think it also does have some ability to augment the budget process and review of the budget and programmings from that perspective. The position in finance is totally different than that. I mean, the primary responsibilities of that position are associated supporting the accounts payable function, auditing all the invoice batches that we get in, and getting payments ready, and so they're dramatically different things. They wouldn't really interact. I think they have two distinctly separate goals and separate reasons that they could stand on their own.
So as I understand then, Norb, you would support both positions. Is that correct?
If you're asking my personal opinion, yes, I would support both positions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Dunning. You're muted. You're muted, Supervisor Dunning.
Okay, I'm going back to Supervisor DeLuca's thoughts about lines 19 and 20. And I guess I would like to make an amendment that would remove lines like 19 and 20.
That would be in order if you wish to do that.
I'll second.
Well, that was a motion, Supervisor Dunning. Is that correct? Okay, and Supervisor Neiman seconds, correct? Okay.
Supervisor Wilkie wishing to speak to the amendment.
Supervisor Wilkie.
I have no problem with the amendment. It's a whereas. The major issue is about where be resolved. If removing those two lines increases comfort with supervisors, I'm fine with that. I will support Supervisor Dunning's amendment.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Gatlin, I see your hand raised. Did you wish to speak to this?
No, I raised that when you said, then you said you couldn't see hands, so.
I can't
spoke.
now.
Thank you.
I can't now. Supervisor Anderson, speaking to the amendment.
Yes, I'd like to speak in support of this amendment as not only is it removing a non-binding part, so it's less effectual, but that it does recognize that it is effectual in that, words hold meaning. Right. And what we say and what we write down as law is important. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Dunning, your hand is up. Do you wish to speak again? No? You're muted. Okay, thank you.
Can I just make one comment, McKinney?
Supervisor McKinney.
I think the original request came from Supervisor Gatlin rather than DeLuca.
Sorry.
Okay.
Thank you for the correction. I see no other hands raised. We are voting on the amendment. Would you repeat the amendment, please, Supervisor Dunning?
A motion to delete lines 19 and 20 from this resolution.
Thank you. All those in favor of the amendment as stated, please indicate by saying unmute first. Supervisor Kronk, unmute. There, thank you. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 All those opposed by nay.
Nay.
We have one nay. The chair rules that the amendment passes. So we are back to the original resolution as amended. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to the original motion as amended? Supervisor Kronk.
Okay, so sorry, I'm not trying to throw a curveball, but I was trying to raise my hand to make an additional amendment. May I do so at this time?
Well, we'd have to let's dispose of this one.
Okay, thank you.
Unless you're going to amend this amendment.
Yes.
No, you're not doing that. Let's dispose of this first. Okay. All right. All those in favor. Well, we did it already.
We did that.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, I see a lot of heads nodding. Thank you very much. We're getting seasick for watching it.
All right.
Okay.
I'm sorry. For clarification, would I be able to make an amendment now to the original?
Yes. Now you're making an amendment to the original as amended. Just to be clear. Go ahead.
Correct.
Go ahead.
I would also propose to remove on line 16 these continuous and embarrassing. Those four words. So it would that whereas on line 15 would read, whereas DHS staff are working to cope with the increasing challenges of their work, these occurrences can harm staff morale and retention in all county departments.
We have an amendment. Is there a second to this amendment?
Second, Schroffnagel.
Second by Supervisor Schroffnagel. Questions, comment, or discussion? I hear none.
Supervisor Wilkie.
Supervisor Wilkie.
I have no objections to that. If it's more comforting to remove that these are continuous, embarrassing occurrences, though they are, If that language is troublesome, I will support that amendment.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to the amendment? I see no request to speak. All those in favor of the amendment, please indicate by unmute first, people. I have to keep reminding you. All those in favor of the amendment, please indicate by saying aye.
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 All those opposed by nay.
Nay.
We have one nay. The chair rules that the amendment passes. We are back to the main motion as amended, now as amended again. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to the main motion as amended twice? Okay, I see no request to speak. All those in favor of the amendment, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Chair Smyer, it's not the amendment now. It's the resolution as amended twice.
Yep.
Sorry, I was lost in that. I thought that we were.
Both
He just made his comment about no objection.
both amendments have passed.
Okay, sorry. I'd like to call him a brain you know what, but I'm not going to use the word. Okay, so we're back to the main motion. Amended motion as amended.
Twice.
Twice. I said that. Right. All those in favor of the motion as amended twice.
There you go.
Please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed by nay. It is unanimous. Thank you. Next, we will go to file 61, but before we do that, as the chair, I'm notifying you that I'm standing down from the chair position and asking Supervisor Bates, as the first vice chair, to take over as chair. I will come back to the chair position when we have disposed of file 61. Supervisor Bates.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have before us now resolution number 2021-061. I would ask
Authorizing the expenditure of funds to conduct a forensic audit of the finances of the Department of Human Services.
I would look for a motion.
Beckfield moves.
Henning seconds.
The second is by
Henning.
Thank you. Then I would look to have this comes from Finance and Budget. So I would ask the Chair of Finance and Budget, Supervisor Pronis, please do an introduction, explanation, if you will, for this particular resolution.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'm going to defer to Supervisor Chilson for the explanation.
Thank you, Supervisor Chilson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This resolution before us is about a forensic audit for a look into the Department of Human Services. A forensic audit is designed to focus on reconstructing past financial transactions to determine fraud or illegal activity. A forensic audit will determine how much money is really missing, the time period in which it took place, and suggest measures. The request for a forensic audit is a proper response to alleged illegal activity. The criminal complaint filed by District Attorney Gary King alleges 9 counts of fraud. The criminal complaint also states that the investigation was hampered by poor bookkeeping within the department. Community confidence is very low, as evidenced by the amount of responses tonight in the public comment, because of perpetual fiscal issues in DHS, now with alleged criminal activity. It magnifies the errors in DHS. A forensic audit is a step forward to restore confidence. We owe it to the taxpayers to do everything we can to find out everything we can and take corrective action. In 2014, the Eau Claire County Management Report by Whipley Accounting stated that there were material weaknesses in internal controls environment, internal controls over financial reporting, and a lack of account reconciliations. Those same findings appeared in the 2013 report and the 2012 reports, and nothing was done about it, which resulted in the Larry Locken treasurer scandal and theft. The Eau Claire County Treasurer, Eau Claire County Sheriff, and Eau Claire County District Attorney have all stated their support for a forensic audit. And when asked by Supervisor Wilkie at the August 18th County Board meeting if he thought a forensic audit would be warranted in the Zer Smith case, Brock Guyan, auditor for Clifton Larson Allen, stated, "I think that's a very clear example." I back up, stated, and I quote, "I think that's a very clear example of what a forensic audit would be geared toward," end quote. Let's not make the same mistakes as in the Larry Locken case. Let's listen to what the experts are asking for and telling us, and let's vote yes for a forensic audit tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next individual I'm going to have speak is our chairperson. He stepped down in order that he can do this, and that's Chair Smyer.
Well, thank you, Chair. I would report, first of all, that the committee administration considered the file, and on a split vote of 3-2, move it forward to the county board. So I noticed that there's a diversity of opinion in that committee. So I'd like to proceed to a statement. So, Madam Chair and fellow supervisors, first, regarding the process, this matter began when 2 supervisors, on their own initiative and claiming support of a double-digit number of supervisors, made a request to the sheriff to investigate the finances of the Department of Human Services. The sheriff apparently opened an investigation, although it was not clear at the time if the investigation was civil or criminal. It has since become clear that the investigation is a criminal investigation, and the DHS staff have been called in for interrogations. The original request did not come from this board, although the 2 supervisors presented the request as if it did come from the board. This means that this board never had the opportunity to review a resolution, examine the facts in the matter, and make a decision regarding any investigation of the Department of Human Services. This ordinary process was bypassed and may be a violation of Wisconsin open meeting law and a walking quorum, according to Robert's Rules of Order. I can only assume that the 2 supervisors, and perhaps other supervisors, determined that their objective could not be reached through regular order and decided to bypass that regular order and are independent of the county board. The same 2 supervisors next drafted a resolution requesting a forensic audit of DHS and submitted the resolution to the Committee on Finance and Budget, which does follow regular order. However, before submitting the resolution, the same 2 supervisors went to the media to announce the resolution and the basis for the resolution. This seems to indicate that the 2 supervisors intended to present their case to the public and to the media from one side only before presenting it in a forum for full discussion of facts. This does not follow regular order. The assertions made regarding DHS and its budget were not based on fact, but on false narrative, innuendo, rumor, and gossip. The resolution did then come before the Committee on Finance and Budget, which voted 4-1 to send the resolution forward to the county board. When the resolution came to the board floor, the chairperson referred it to the administration committee because the resolution made reference to that committee. The committee on administration did consider the resolution and voted 3-2 to send it to the board floor. Second, regarding the facts, for the 2019 fiscal year, DHS originally projected in May to be $2.2 million over budget, but due to a manual error in the reporting of the CCS gap payment, had to correct that projection to $3.4 million. Finally, a late audit adjustment of $135,000 was discovered that was ultimately decided to be reported in 2020. The final 2019 figure was approximately a $3.5 million deficit. The budget overage was reviewed by the Human Services Board and the Committee on Finance and Budget repeatedly, both separately and jointly, when the director of DHS and her staff met with the Budget and Finance Committee. Many questions were asked in both committees, and all questions were answered, with no indication of fraud or embezzlement. And the director of DHS presented to the county board an overview of expenditures across 5 years, clarifying exactly where the overages occurred. Forensic audit is employed when there is evidentiary basis for asserting fraud or embezzlement, as was the case in the Lockman investigation a few years ago. There is no basis in fact, just rumor, gossip, and unfounded suspicion, and there is no stated person or persons as object of the investigation. The case of Zer Smith was detected by DHS, investigated by DHS, and referred to the Eau Claire City Police and the district attorney for investigation and possible prosecution. If that case is to be used as a basis for the request of a forensic audit, then most of the departments would have to request such an audit when they discover irregularities or illegal staff actions, and that is not what they do. That is not how they handle it. The entire matter has the appearance of a whisper campaign with the sole purpose of damaging, intimidating, and bullying both DHS and this board. When you hear that the public has questions and that trust in DHS and this board must be restored through a forensic audit, it is the two supervisors plus some other members of this board who started and fomented those rumors, bypassing regular order of the board where such rumors and gossip could have been tested by the facts. This entire matter does damage not only to DHS and its staff, but to this board, to the services of DHS and its provider agencies, and most important, to the thousands of clients of DHS. I have here a letter from Group Health Cooperative dated September 4th, 2020. Quote, public awareness surrounding multiple reports of missing funds at the Eau Claire County Department of Human Services has heightened concerns from the cooperative that it could hinder the availability of Eau Claire County to provide timely access to care for our full membership population, end quote. This is not an inadvertent effect. This is an intended effect. I ask you to defeat this resolution. Let the whole matter come to the county board by regular process. Put everything on the table. Make a decision based on facts, not rumor, gossip, innuendo, and false narrative. I have two brief final comments. Because of the transfer, this would involve a transfer of money from the contingency fund. I would look for a 2/3 vote, and that would be 19 affirmative votes to pass it. And finally, I request that the vote on this resolution be a roll call vote. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to lay down some parameters in order that we can be sure that we take people in this sequence of their request, with the exception of Catherine, who is joining us by phone, and she will verbally let us know when she wishes to contribute, if she does. I would ask you to use your chat function in order that you can request to speak. And then Samantha will keep track of when those come in, and the person addressing that at that time, she will let me know that. I will recognize you. So at this time, I'd like to open for discussion resolution 061. Is there anyone wishing to speak to this issue?
Supervisor Pagonis.
The chair recognizes Supervisor Pagonis. And I would remind you there is a 5-minute type span for you to get your comments in.
I don't need 5 minutes. In consideration of Supervisor Smyer's comments, I hope that everyone here has read the criminal complaint. It has a great deal of detail regarding a state-funded program called SPARK. The criminal complaint is replete with information regarding theft of the SPARK program. We don't know how the state is responding to this. I've been asking. We don't know whether the state has an expectation of having an outside review or an outside audit. We don't have any information regarding what the state's expectation is for restitution or where that restitution is going to come from. So given that there is a state grant at play here, I think that we have the responsibility, and we would be expected by the state for the county to exert due diligence to determine exactly what happened, determine exactly how much was stolen in the Spark program, and to respond to the state with actual information from a third party who is qualified to investigate. That is what we need to do. We have an obligation to the state, and we could potentially jeopardize grants in the future if we do not respond to them accurately and adequately. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person commenting is
Supervisor Coffey.
Supervisor Coffey. The chair recognizes you to speak.
Thank you. I have some really deep concerns about moving forward with this proposed forensic audit. I understand that internal DHS procedures identified and referred to the Eau Claire Police Department, the former DHS employees alleged 9 counts of fraud related to credit card purchases for a total of about $13,000. And I know this is not concluded for sure exactly how much. This is less than 0.5% of the $3 million DHS overage, not to say anything about an insignificant amount of the total DHS budget. As I understand, no other financial criminal activity has been uncovered, and what was uncovered by DHS and forward to our police department. So that shows that some of our internal mechanisms are really working. I do agree that DHS accounting processes may need to be strengthened, but I think a forensic audit is not likely to address those needs. The needs of processing, controls, and I think we all can agree that they do have some inadequate accounting and reconciling of their accounts. So they need help with that. And I asked Catherine Schaaf if she would talk about the what has been done in the past for a process and control audit. And I would like to have her have some time to talk about, because otherwise what I would like to see done instead of a financial process or a forensic audit would be to have that process and control audit come back in and help with processing. That will, I think, get us much farther down the road.
Thank you.
Supervisor McKinney.
Supervisor McKinney, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The DHS board reviewed this current situation as a board. We voted unanimously against the need for a forensic audit at this time. Allowing the system to process the alleged theft, which I believe is still being adjudicated through the system. This doesn't, to me, feel like a normalized path for review. It feels like a rush to judgment. And I think we're seeing, as we saw earlier tonight, the importance of language and how much damage the language we use can create. It creates perceptions that can turn into erroneous beliefs that get presented as facts, and I think can really influence the public who we are here to serve. And so I would be voting against the forensic audit at this time.
Samantha, who do you have next?
Schneider would like to get on the list sometime.
Who do you have next, Samantha?
Supervisor Stelgis.
Supervisor Stelgis, and then Supervisor Snyder will take you right after that.
Okay.
Supervisor Stelgis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So my comments are going to be somewhat similar to the last two supervisors. I have drafted an amendment that forward, if we can get that ultimately to all the supervisors to review. But at its highest level, what it does is it suggests that instead of using the term forensic audit and the entire DHS department, that we rather provide whatever tools we need to provide to the sheriff to pursue and investigate the criminal activities to the fullest extent. And if that means a forensic audit by the sheriff's department, great. If it means that the sheriff would hire a financial expert where they do not have expertise to pursue that, then I fully support that. But secondly, I also think that we do need to have a complete, very thorough program audit, and Supervisor Coffey just used different terms. But I'm fully in favor of that to pursue the administrative problems that we have. And I think that that program audit should focus on three very specific things. The first of which is to critically evaluate our control mechanisms within the department. What can we do to preclude some of these things from happening, and why, what level of checks and balances do we have? And what are the recommendations to correct those? Secondly, we do need to completely evaluate our accounting systems. With the permission of DHS, I did spend a couple hours actually going through some of their systems, and I believe that despite being well-intentioned, that the systems that they use are outdated, archaic, and prone to error, which we've seen errors. And I think those are errors, not criminal activities. And third, so I think that we ought to completely do that. The audit ought to also evaluate what other counties in the state do for their accounting systems. And we ought to take advantage of some of those best practices and try to implement them here. And lastly, I think we need to evaluate program effectiveness. We've asked for this many times and really don't have any good answers. How do we know how successful we are in delivering social services? The two other big departments in the county, be they the highway, at least we have a PACER rating. We can track if we're getting.
Someone needs to
Somebody better answer their phone there. The sheriff's department, that's a tough one. We ask, how do we know if our community is safer? I don't think we have a good metric for that, but I'd like to see them do the same thing. But we need a way to evaluate the effectiveness of our programs and critically say we're going to fund this one or we're not going to fund this one. And the audit should look to see what the best practices are to do that, look at the gaps that exist, and make recommendations to correct them. So my motion tries to touch on those things.
Just a moment. I have way past 5 minutes.
I'm done.
Thank you. I have Supervisor Schneider.
I have a question for the sheriff and then a follow-up question that I'm not quite sure whether it should be the sheriff or whether it should be our legal counsel that answers it. And my basic question is, before I vote on this, I think I need to know, what has the sheriff done? What have they uncovered? Is it needed? Show me the need. And I understand that the sheriff is interviewing, and his staff are interviewing folk from human services and outside vendors. And since it's apparently a criminal investigation, do these people receive legal counsel? Because I could picture it being pretty intimidating for people from human services. They have the sheriff come call, and no offense to our wonderful sheriff, but that's kind of intimidating. And do they receive counsel, or should they be receiving counsel?
Is the sheriff on the line? Apparently the sheriff is not present. Is that correct, Samantha?
Correct. I do not have Sheriff Kramer on the line.
Thank you. And then Tim Sullivan, maybe
Yes.
could you address the issue of possibly legal counsel for the individuals being interviewed or being called upon to testify?
Well, and that depends on what the sheriff is doing. And at this point, we have asked him whether or not he's conducting a criminal investigation, civil investigation, and he has given us no response whatsoever. I know that he is having deputies request individual employees to be interviewed, and beyond that, he has given us no information.
Do we know whether or not the individuals that are interviewed have access to legal counsel? Do we know that?
Well, there have been instances where I have informed the sheriff like to sit in on the interviews because there are potential concerns concerning personnel issues. If there is wrongdoing going on at the Department of Services, we would need to be aware of the administration of the county for potential disciplinary action if any needed to occur. And they have refused to allow me to sit in on it. At this point, they have not been having legal counsel.
What is your opinion about that?
Well, if they are defendants or if they're respondents, they're suspects for criminal activity, they would certainly have a right to have an attorney under the law, under the Constitution. If they are just witnesses, that's a different question. You always have a right to an attorney. You don't have to go to the police without having an attorney present. Is there a mandatory obligation for the county to provide one? No. But as individuals, they could request to have their own attorney there present with them. I don't represent the individual employees. I represent the county and the departments. And so if there are potential individuals that are being looked at as potential defendants, they would have a right to have an attorney.
Madam Chair.
Who's
Mr. Beckfield, the sheriff is listening. He's unable to call in. We can call him. He'd be happy to talk.
Madam Chair, point of order. We have a motion to amend the resolution, and we seem to be off on a whole variety of topics.
I'm sorry, I don't believe we have a motion. I think that we indicated that the motion would be circulated so people could read it.
Yeah,
but I don't believe we have a motion yet on amendment.
I would ask, Madam Chair, ask Supervisor Stelgis if that was his intent.
No, my intent was to move the motion.
I did not hear that. I'm sorry, I did not hear that motion.
Okay, well, the motion in its hard form is now presented in the text that someone has shown.
So Supervisor Stelgis, just for clarification purposes, are you moving to amend file number 2021-61 according to what you've indicated in your hard document?
That is correct.
And do you know that all of the supervisors have received a copy of that?
I do not. I sent that, I'm making this motion from the floor, although I did provide an advance copy to a few people prior to the meeting.
It might be wise if people don't have this hard motion that it be read out loud so everybody is aware of the contents of the motion. And maybe
I'd like to do that. There are a few typos, so I'd be happy to read it and try to correct as I go.
I think we'll have our clerk read it, please, as we usually do for anything that's written.
Is there a second?
Second to the motion.
Well, we don't know what the motion is until it's been read.
Yeah.
It would come after it's been read.
Thank you.
Could we also have it emailed to us so we could read it a little bit on our own? I can pull it up on my computer. I can read it a lot easier.
Supervisors, I did email it to you about 15 minutes ago.
Oh, okay, thank you.
You're welcome. This is Clerk Loomis. Am I ready to read it? Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. It is to delete lines 31 through 38 and replace it with the following. Now therefore be resolved that the Eau Claire County Board of Supervisors authorizes the Sheriff's Department to hire forensic experts to pursue the full scope of the credit card theft, to include heretofore unreported thefts or other persons involved. The authorization provides funding of $25,000 for such experts, and the findings of said expert will be provided to the district attorney and the county board of supervisors. The Committee on Finance and Budget is authorized to spend up to $75,000 for a program audit of DHS with the defined goals of evaluation of management controls within DHS and recommendations for improvement, evaluating accounting and forecasting practices for accuracy, timeliness, and consistency. Such evaluation will compare Eau Claire County practices to similar counties in Wisconsin and recommend, quote, best practices, end quote, implemented by those counties considered to be, quote, best in class, end quote, which Eau Claire may implement. Analysis of current program outcome effectiveness. This will evaluate both internally delivered services and externally contracted services. The scope of external services should cover 80% of the expenditures for the past 3 years and audit the vetting and evaluation of vendors for service delivery outcomes in compliance with county contract terms. The audit shall also review both statewide and nationwide best practices for evaluating the cost benefit, e.g. effectiveness for the delivery of social services. While this may seem somewhat subjective, every government entity in the county provides some level of these services. Government entities and higher educational institutions have dedicated staff to address this important issue. The audit will identify any gaps in Eau Claire County current methods to achieve such status and a recommendation regarding possible implementation steps. Should the cost of each of the above two expenditures not be feasible within the limits cited above, the Committee on Finance and Budget may modify the expenditures not to exceed $100,000 in total. End.
And so is there a second to that motion, to that amendment?
Second by Christopherson.
Second by Christopherson. And again, I would urge you to use our chat so we get people in the right sequence.
My chat is not working. I apologize.
Just to clarify, are we getting the sheriff on the line to answer my question, or are we not going to do that?
Well, we've had now Supervisor Pagonin back us up to where we are looking at a proposed motion, and now it has become a motion, has been seconded. And so this is an amendment to the resolution. Will be on the amendment. Is there anyone wishing to speak to the amendment?
Madam Chair, I did raise my hand and I did send in a request to speak some time ago.
Was it on this particular issue?
On this issue, but I'd be happy to restrict my comments to the amendment.
Do you have any other individuals that signed up to speak to the amendment?
Supervisor Bates, I can't say specifically to the amendment, but I do have Supervisor DeLuca and Supervisor Roberts, Supervisor Maury that were in front of Supervisor Wilkie.
I'd be happy to speak to the amendment, Supervisor Bates.
I will take your particular comments and then go back to anyone who wishes to speak to the amendment.
I'm going to keep mine to the amendment. I'm looking over the amendment. Actually, it's quite a good amendment. It's very comprehensive. I don't have opposition to the amendment, and find myself leaning towards supporting it. It still addresses the specific reason for a forensic audit. It's going to have forensic experts, and that's fine with me, that are going to look into the theft because it's been said that there isn't basis in facts. Well, a criminal complaint with 9 counts tells me that it's more than rumor that we've had a theft, and that is a basis for forensic experts to look into that theft. Because if you have not read the criminal complaint, which is a public document, you should have read it, or at least do read it. You'll note in that criminal complaint that the individual was terminated from employment in October. And at that time, it's alleged she admitted to the theft. It was first documented in the complaint as $900, then scratched off down to $800 of unauthorized purchases, be it through credit card or a gift card. I don't know which. That person was terminated. For some reason, which I don't quite fully understand, she admitted to it, or at least admitted to that level at that point, according to the termination. For some reason, which I do not understand, it doesn't make sense to me, that was not reported to law enforcement until January 22nd. I would have thought you don't just do an internal investigation when you're quite confident that a crime has been committed. So 3 months later, law enforcement was notified by individuals from
Supervisor
the
Wilkie,
county.
are you speaking to the amendment?
I'm speaking to the amendment in support of the first part of the amendment where there are going to be forensic experts. I'm feeling like that's going to be adequate. If you don't want to call it a forensic audit because it's scary or threatening, that's not my issue. My issue is that theft to be fully investigated. Even in the report, as I was saying, the investigating officer in January made it clear, quote, "This is no audit," and made it clear in the report that it was very difficult to complete as much as he did. And the bottom line is we didn't get to a dollar level.
Right,
and that's what I'd like to do. So I'll support this amendment. It accomplishes the forensic part, plus it goes farther.
Thank you for those comments. Samantha, am I right in assuming here that Don Mowry is next?
Yes, Supervisor Maury is next.
Thank you. Supervisor Maury.
I just had a few comments, but mostly to the original motion. To the amendment, I still don't, I must admit, I have not read the criminal complaint. But I must say that accounting errors are not criminal. No money was taken. And I would like to pose a question. I mean, pose something to my fellow supervisors in the form of a question. It's in the way that the state has set up the system for being reimbursed for Medicaid is very difficult because you're reimbursed for 75% upfront of the services you've provided, and then you have to wait 12 to 18 months to get your other 25%. That causes a lot of confusion. It crosses calendar years and accounting years. This was supposedly a temporary measure back 10 years ago. We have a situation where we have one employee that was caught taking gift cards and making inappropriate charges. The damage was fairly minimal. The case is in court, and additional safeguards have been put in place to prevent a similar occurrence in the future. What has the sheriff found in his independent investigation of the Department of Human Services? Has he uncovered anything criminal? You know, why are we doing this? Where's the beef? You know, I don't see the reason to do this. And we're in the midst of a deepening and very troubling COVID crisis. It's going to get worse, and DHS is going to be under continuing stress. And what is this going to do to the morale of the department? A department that has turned around, and Diane Cable, under her capable leadership, has turned the ship around. It's hard to turn a ship around. I was in the Navy. Ships are big. It takes a while. But the new philosophy of preserving families and stressing kinship care is very, you know, it's helping to prevent expensive placement in foster care, group homes, treatment foster care, and institutional care. And at the most recent Human Services Board meeting, DHS is now projecting a balanced budget by the end of 2020. Diane has the respect of DHS director statewide and was elected president of the Association of Human Services Directors. The state is actually also endorsing this families first philosophy and moving the whole state forward in terms of how it approaches its child welfare programs. So I just don't see where the beef is. And if you haven't seen that commercial, you get a big fluffy bun that at first glance might appeal to your hunger, but when you pick the lid off, it's like, where's the beef? Where's the evidence that there's more wrongdoing in the department?
Thank you for thank you for those comments.
Chairman Bates.
Yes.
Bates. This is Supervisor Chilson. I'm not looking to speak. I just want to let you know that Carl Anton has called me. He is on the line and he's listening to the meeting. He just wants to noted that he is on the line as a call-in user, and he's not sure that he says he's attempted to, but is not sure he's been acknowledged. So just be aware of that.
Thank you. And then Samantha, who do I have next?
Supervisor DeLuca.
Thank you. Supervisor DeLuca, the chair recognizes you to speak.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think Supervisor Mowry kind of hit it on the head. We don't have all the information that we need as supervisors, and I believe Chair Smyer also mentioned this, that the process went awry, and maybe supervisors didn't know what the right process was.
If you think this, I don't think you can do it for 75.
Supervisor Coffey, would you mute your? Thank you. Go ahead, Supervisor DeLuca.
So I believe we as supervisors don't have what we need at this time to really determine. I'm not against an audit. We've had theft in finance department, treasurer's department here. Maybe we better start thinking about looking at every so many years having an overall criminal audit for all of the county. But I don't like the fact that we're just specifically picking on certain departments. We've had overages in highway. We've had overages before in the sheriff's department. So at this point in time, I want more information before I spend $100,000 when we are in this difficult session where we don't know where our finances are going to end up. So at this point in time, I like some of the ideas that were presented here in this amendment, but I'm not going to be supporting it at this time.
Thank you. And who do I have next, Samantha?
Supervisor Roberts.
Supervisor Roberts, would you please feel free to give your comments?
Thank you. At this point, I'm worried about public perception, and I think that in order to restore public perception, we need to take a look at this audit and treat it with seriousness, because like out in the business world, audits are commonplace. So I know that this might feel new to a lot of people that aren't in business, but for those of us that are, this is nothing new. We do these quarterly, 4 times a year. This isn't a new thing. Audits are done all the time. And I think we do that so that we have transparency and so that we're not whitewash things and make them go away.
This is not an audit per se. It's a forensic audit. So there has
I'm aware of that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. And to complement what Supervisor Stell just said, I think that a program review should be done. I don't know that that necessarily needs to be part of a resolution. That should just be an ongoing process in my mind. But I do support the audit, and I think that at this point it's needed to restore public confidence in and within our transparency. I think if we don't do it, we're going to have a larger public outcry. It's my 2 cents.
Thank you. And who is next, Samantha?
Supervisor Coffey.
Supervisor Coffey, your second time.
Thank you. So I really like Supervisor Stelge's proposal, and I would amend the bottom that if this isn't adequate amount of money, that we keep it in that proportion of 25% to 75% for the forensic versus the program audit. And that if we do not have adequate funds, it goes back not to budget and finance only, but also to administration.
Is that an amendment to the amendment?
Yes, yes. That we keep the percentages as they are. And if it isn't enough money, that it goes back to both administration and finance and budget.
You've heard the amendment to the amendment. Is there a second to that?
I'll second that. That makes sense. More eyes on oversight. No problem.
The second is by Supervisor Wilkie. Further discussion on the amendment to the amendment.
What was this, Supervisor Dunning? What was the amendment again? The amendment to the amendment?
Okay, so we would, when we're talking about the forensic audit, Supervisor Stell just said that that would be $25,000, and that for the program audit, it would be $75,000 maximum. I think both of them would be maximum amounts. And that if it goes over that, that we would keep the percentages of the amounts the same. So of the total. So 25% for the forensic audit, 75% for the program audit. And if it goes over that amount of the $100,000, as suggested by Supervisor Stelgis, that it would go back to both the finance department and to the administration, budget and finance department, and to the administration committee. Both, I said that wrong, to the administration committee and to the budget and finance committee.
You've heard the amendment to the amendment, and the second has been offered. Discussion.
Madam Chair, this is Supervisor Beckfield. I know Supervisor Coffey's had 2 times and my hand has been raised. Are you not seeing my hand raised?
No, I'm not. And actually, what I've asked people to do, Supervisor Beckfield, is when you wish to speak, please put it on your chat so we keep people in the right order.
All right, I'll try and learn how to do that in the next 5 minutes here.
Okay, but go ahead, please.
You want me to comment now? I'm happy to, I guess.
Yes.
Quite frankly, I'm kind of surprised people are wondering what this is about. And I do like the commercial, "Where's the beef?" It was a Wendy's commercial. Thank you very much for bringing that up. It shows my age. Some of the things I want to mention that's in the report so far that some of you have not read, and I'm quoting, the dollar amounts are originally $945 crossed out. It went to $850.78, and it was reported in the paper at $2,000, and then there was a quote of the total loss of credit cards by detective was $13,500. But if you read at the bottom of the report, the total amount, according to the report on page 3, states it's $21,777.74. And it clearly states that they honestly don't know. They would need a forensic audit to clear up the dollar amount. I think that's enough right there to say, hey, let's get the real numbers so we know how much has really been taken of the taxpayers' dollars. Now, it also states in there that a large number of accounting discrepancies are in the records. That's a quote from page 5. The other thing I'd like to state is that according to the complaint, 43 gift cards of the amount of $500 each were purchased, and they totaling $21,500. This is not small potatoes that we're talking about. Plus, there are things like using the credit card issued by the county to her to rent a car on vacation, admits to buying items on the NFLshop.com for sportswear, not Packers, I'll have you know. And the other thing that had to do with other gift cards were purchased from giftcards.com, and those need to be dug out. Plus, she also admits to a Lotus Day Spa paid by the taxpayer. Those are just a few of the details that were mentioned here in this report. If you've not had the pleasure of reading it, if you've not read it, I'll be happy to send it to you. I know I asked the chair to consider sending it to everyone, and he chose not to. The other thing that I have is been brought up about employee morale. Trust me, I agree. Continuing to take money from the fund, $7, $8, $9 million from our balance, our rainy day fund, as it's called in many cases, is a problem. And boy, if we had that $7, $8, $9 million today of our shortfall.
Excuse me, Supervisor Beckfield, but would you still keep your comments to the amendment on the amendment?
Okay. All right. I support the amendment. I really do, because I really think the program audit is needed as well. It will be coming. By the way, I did speak to a number of financial auditors, and they said that the number was going to be considerably less than the amount I asked for, the original 100. It's probably between 30 and 40,000 at the max. Therefore, I think the 25 might be able to be workable with that dollar amount. So yes, I would support Supervisor Stelgis's plan.
This is on the amendment to the amendment.
To the amendment, yes.
Thank you. Who do I have next, Samantha?
Where we stand on this?
Supervisor Christopherson, did you want to speak on the amendment to the amendment?
I would like to hold my comment when we get back to the amendment, please.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak on the amendment to the amendment?
Supervisor Gatlin.
Thank
Yes.
you, Supervisor Gatlin. Would you
Amendment
go
to the
ahead?
amendment. Thank you, Madam Chair. I am not supporting the amendment to the amendment because I'm going to not support the amendment. The only thing I can add to everything that's been said is we don't talk about what what human services does. We don't talk about this perfect storm that has happened over the last 3-5 years, the years that they have been in the hole, the years that the director and her staff are constantly trying new initiatives, aware of the dollars that it costs
to have social improvement programs. And the perfect storm, of course, being the poverty that perpetuates without any relief in sight, the meth, the lack of state funding, the lack of funding mandates, and to the amendment, it's how can you put metrics on saving people? How can you put metrics on this person didn't go to jail or this family stayed together? I don't know how you can take dollars and expect to have tangent responses, tangent metrics for that. Thank you.
Thank you. And anyone else wishing to speak to the amendment?
Schneider?
Supervisor Schneider, please.
One way or the other, I'll get a vote.
So the amendment to the amendment is basically saying if we go over 100K, then they have to go to both finance and admin, and they have to spend in this 1-to-3 ratio. Is that correct? So the amendment to the amendment only kicks in if somebody's going to go over their base amount.
As the maker of the amendment to the amendment.
Yeah, it would be a 1-to-4, 25% to 75%. So it'd be a 1-to-4 ratio.
Well, it's kind of 1-to-3, but anyway.
1-to-3. Okay. Well, thank you for the math help. So.
But that's for over 100K.
If it goes over, we're going to try to go under 100K, right? That's up to. But if it goes over, then it goes back to not just finance and budget, but also to administration committees.
Are there any other comments? Supervisor Snyder, does that answer your question?
No, not totally, because I assume these are independent contractors, quite possibly. So if the first audit, for lack of a better word, I'll call it the forensic part. If the forensic part is saying, hey, I want to go over my 25, then does that trigger it going to the finance and budget and the administrative? Or because these are independent providers, quite possibly, for these two audits.
Yes, I would say that's true, and I would think that we could get both of those estimates before any work is moved forward.
Okay, so if they come in over 25 and 75, then we say, whoa, we got to go through these two committees. Okay,
correct.
Gotcha.
Yep, thanks.
On the amendment to the amendment.
Yes, and just a housekeeping thing, I do have Supervisor Anton unmuted, so if he wants to speak, he can chime in. Right now I have Supervisor Crunk up.
All right, I think I'll take Supervisor Crunk, and then right after that, I'll take Supervisor Anton.
For the amendment to the amendment, and I really appreciate everybody's dialogue so far, and there was a lot of comments that I also echo. However, I think possibly my question was just answered. So with the estimates of the work to be done, if it's different vendors and combined, they come up with an estimate that's over $100,000, nothing happens. Or do people start doing the work and then say, well, if it's independent vendors, now we've sort of spent up to this point, but we need more, and it's going to go back to then the aforementioned committees? I'm a little confused by that, and it might be a moot point, but I'm just concerned that it's kind of like, do you start building a house then, and then it's not done, and you have to go back and ask for more money? I'm just curious. Honestly, and I'm going to try to keep it to the amendment, but I wish that we would have had conversation from our administrator, and then the sheriff as well before we kind of got into this, but we're already here. So
Apparently the sheriff is on the line, but this sheriff is not involved in the amendment to the amendment.
right.
This is all about how the monies that would be delegated to this inquiry would be used. Any further comments in regard to the amendment to the amendment?
Supervisor Leary.
Yes, Supervisor Leary.
To speak to the motion as amended, so I hope we can vote soon on this.
And I think we're almost ready to do that. I'm not seeing anyone else wishing to speak to the amendment to the amendment. I'll ask the clerk to read that and then we will vote.
The amendment to the amendment is adding, if it goes over 100,000 or based on 25%, 75%, that it would also go to the administration committee. Already on the amendment is the Committee on Finance and Budget, so the additional is administration committee that it would be referred to if it goes over the 100,000 based on the 25%, 75%, that ratio.
Thank you.
And
We'll vote
Chair
in
Bates?
writing, please.
Yeah, Chair Bates, are we, Smyer had already asked for roll call vote, so I would think you'd want him on the amendments also.
And that is correct. I will do that. So would you please call the roll?
Voting on the amendment to the amendment?
The question is the amendment to the amendment, and a yes vote would mean that you are in favor of the amendment to the amendment, which refers it to also the administration committee based on if it goes over the 20%, 75% ratio. Gibson?
Yes.
McKinney?
No.
Supervisor McKinney? I think you said no, but
Amendment to the amendment.
this is the amendment to the amendment.
Yeah, I said no.
That's what I thought. I could see your mouth move. Supervisor Knight?
You're muted.
Yes, sorry.
Agonis?
Yes.
Anton? Samantha, is he unmuted? No?
Supervisor Anton should be unmuted, yes.
Supervisor Anton, how would you like to vote on the amendment to the amendment?
Let's go to the next person and come back.
I hear a very faint yes from him twice now.
Thank you. Zook?
Yes.
Chilson? Supervisor Chilson?
Yes.
Stelgis?
Yes.
Maury?
No.
Coffee?
Yes.
Henning?
Yes.
Bates?
No.
Russell? Supervisor Russell?
Yes.
Gatlin? Supervisor Gatlin?
No. Why can't you hear me?
I can hear you now. What's your answer?
Negative, no.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Smyer?
No.
Hambick Boyle?
Yes.
Neiman?
No.
Supervisor Neiman?
No.
Dunning? Supervisor Dunning?
No.
No.
Yeah.
Supervisor Wilkie?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Beckfield?
Yes.
Schneider?
No.
Leary?
Yes.
DeLuca?
No.
Jansen?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Schroffnagel?
No.
Roberts? Supervisor Roberts?
Yes.
Cronk?
No.
Christofferson?
Yes.
And so we will need a 2/3 vote on this, if I'm not mistaken.
I think on the resolution, but probably not on the amendments.
You want to check with Tim and see?
Point of order, Madam Chair. Are we sure that we need a 2/3 vote? There's nothing in the resolution that says that we're taking it from the contingency plan. So shouldn't it be just a majority vote on all of these votes?
I think that's a question that isn't going to be, my understanding was that this money would come from the contingency fund. And if it's not coming from the contingency fund, before we act on this resolution, we should know where the money's going to be coming from.
My point of order is that it's not specifying the contingency fund.
Tim Sullivan. For purposes of the amendment, you're just voting on whether or not the amendment to the amendment would be passed. At this point, you're not actually voting on whether or not there's an expenditure of money. You're voting on whether or not you would add the language of having the Committee on Administration also have the issue referred to it if it goes above $100,000. And so at this point, I don't believe that it requires a 2/3 vote.
Thank you for that clarification.
The results of the vote are 18 yeses and 11 noes. Amendment to the amendment passes.
Thank you. And now we'll go back to actually the further action. We'll go back to the original resolution unless I'm mistaken.
No. Still G's.
Not yet. You still got the amendment as amended.
The amendment, we have to go back to the one that was amended. You're right. Would you read that then, please?
That's a big, long one.
Yeah.
Oh, it is, and you've already read it. Is the board comfortable with what they see or have read in regard to the resolution that was suggested by Supervisor Stelgis, or moved by Supervisor Stelgis?
I'd still want to hear from the sheriff before I vote on it.
Is the sheriff available?
I do believe we identified the sheriff and unmuted him.
Is the sheriff available, please? What is your pleasure, board?
Madam Chair, a point of privilege. Point of privilege. There's an awful lot of background noise. It's making it difficult to hear the speakers. I suspect that it's coming from some of the telephone users. I would ask them to mute, please. I'm having difficulty understanding what people are saying.
I'm having the same problem.
For those on the phone, can you mute your phones until we have this discussion over with? Unless you're speaking. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is the sheriff available? Apparently the sheriff is not available on his call. Samantha, does he appear to be unmuted?
I believe we identified which one we thought he was, but I can't. But I've unmuted him and he may not be there.
I have to assume that he's not, since we're getting no response. from him. And so we'll move back to the issue of the amendment itself. Again, are there any further questions on the amendment as the amendment has been amended?
Madam Chair,
If I wanted to postpone, would that be an amendment to the amendment?
If you wanted to postpone, that would have to be a motion unto itself, I do believe.
This is Martha Neiman. I would like to hear from the county administrator before we do any voting on the amendment to the resolution.
I'm going to go back to Catherine Schneider. Did that answer your question, Catherine? Your question was whether or not you would need, if you wanted to make a motion to postpone. Did that answer your question?
Not exactly.
Okay. That would have to be just a motion that was made on the weight of its own. And Martha?
So is it made now, or is it made after we deal with this amendment?
I'll check with corporate counsel. A motion to corporate counsel.
Well, and it depends on the motion to postpone. Is she making a motion to table it, or is she making a motion to postpone it to a date certain? Those are two different things. If it's a motion to date certain or a motion to table, those are motions that take precedence, so they would have to be voted on immediately. And they're essentially, it's an up or down vote is what it is.
All right. Does that answer your question, Supervisor Snyder?
So if I wanted to postpone until we heard from the sheriff, is that date certain, or is that person certain, or?
It depends on your motion. If you're wanting to postpone in order that we can hear from the sheriff, then basically you could set a date.
Okay, then I would like to move to postpone until next month, which date I think was established as October 6th.
And that's an up or down vote. Is there a second to that motion?
Lucas seconds.
Supervisor Bates,
Yes.
I am getting word from Danielle Powers that the sheriff and Joel Bredigan are both on the line. Do you want to attempt to try to get them to speak one more time?
Supervisor Schneider, right in the middle of your motion, are you willing to hold that motion until the sheriff can speak?
Sure, I didn't put a period on the end of it.
Thank you. And so we will wait, and if the sheriff is able to speak to us now, we will wait for that to happen.
I'd like to remind all call-in users to please mute unless you are the sheriff or Joel. You could please mute because I'm unmuting everyone.
And leave me on, please, Samantha.
Fine. Sheriff Kramer or Joel?
Hello, this is Joel. I'm not sure if the sheriff is on or not, but I can be happy to answer any questions.
You are not the sheriff. He's not the sheriff. He's not.
Joel, is the sheriff available?
I'm not sure if he's on or not, but I would be happy to answer any questions for the sheriff's department.
I think I have to ask the maker of the question whether or not Joel's answering for the sheriff would be acceptable.
Chairwoman Bates, just point of clarification, I think the maker of the question should know that Captain Bredigan is the second in the, he's the undersheriff, so he's as close to the sheriff as he can get.
That still doesn't address my concern. My concern is whether or not the individual asking for the sheriff to be present will accept anyone other than him, including the second in command.
If the second in command thinks he can answer the question, sure, that's great.
Joel?
Yes, I would be happy to answer any questions. I'm very familiar with the ongoing investigation.
I'd like
Thank
an
you.
update. The question was an update on the investigation, and has criminal mischief beyond the Zier thing been found?
Well, obviously, I think everybody's sensitive that this is an ongoing investigation, and I think the sheriff's letter earlier this week that requested the forensics audit for us to clarify some items that have come into question speaks for itself. We definitely have run into some irregularities that we may not have the expertise to answer at this particular time, but we certainly have questions that need to be answered.
And does that answer your question, Supervisor Schneider?
Kind of, yeah.
I mean, if you're asking right out if it's our request for a forensic audit, absolutely yes.
I think she had one other question earlier, and that was whether or not the individuals that are being interviewed by the Sheriff's Department have legal counsel.
Well, at this point, we do not have anybody in custody, so those are legal questions. Absolutely, everybody has a right to counsel if they're being interrogated or in custody. We do not have anybody in custody for this event. We are running into issues with access to information.
Any other questions for Joel?
Yes, this is Supervisor Dunning.
Yes.
My question is that we already have the city police department doing some investigating. How does the sheriff rank in response to the sheriff's office rank in response to the investigations? Do they have precedence over the city? Does the city have precedence? Are you working together to investigate?
Well, with any other investigation, we always work collaboratively with our partners. The sheriff is the ultimate law enforcement officer for the county. That is the city was working on one particular incident. The sheriff's department is investigating several other questions that came to us and are trying to find out the facts on those.
So they're it's a criminal investigation?
Well, we always start out as the fact-finding investigation, and we do not call it a criminal investigation until items are found. Certainly, there are items that are in question that we were still trying to get to the bottom of that potentially could be criminal.
So your investigation is in no way complete at this point?
Absolutely not. We are still, yep, correct. We're still trying to find all the facts. Again, we have several more witnesses that need to be interviewed. We're still attempting to do that and set up times to make that happen. The other item we need to discuss is that the difference between criminal investigation and personnel issues, they have to be separate from each other. So people may have a right to have protections in a personnel matter that are different from a criminal matter.
I have a question.
Please.
So, Joel, what is the evidentiary basis for the request for a forensic audit? Because a forensic audit is a focused activity. And what I've heard is a focus on the Zura Smith case, but that's already known. So what is the evidentiary basis for a forensic audit, and of whom?
Correct. The forensics is trying to get the basis for the evidence itself. A program audit is how monies are used or how things are determined to be used based on grants or other items. A forensic audit is looking for evidence. The Smith one is one particular one. That is not the only one that may or may not be involved in a forensic audit.
Well, I don't, that's not an answer to the question. A forensic audit has an evidentiary basis, as in the case of the Locken affair a few years ago. So what is the evidentiary basis for the request for a forensic audit? I'm not willing to spend $100,000 on what I would call a fishing expedition. What is the reason to go forward with a forensic audit?
Based on our current investigation, there are several other anomalies that we would like to have answers to, and they cannot be answered without a forensic audit. Again, it's an ongoing, so we can't comment on the specifics, but there may or may not be more anomalies that need to be answered.
I don't agree with you. I don't see the answer that I'm looking for.
I would be happy to clarify if I could. Again, we have determined that there are several other things that need to be looked into that I can't give the evidentiary piece to at this particular time.
I would say then, until you have that a request for a forensic audit is not in order. I don't see doing it without having.
Please, Joel, can you answer that? We're having
I'm
trouble.
sorry, you cut out on that last piece. I couldn't hear it.
Would you repeat your question, Chair?
I was saying that I don't see the sense of going forward with a forensic audit on the basis of what you just said. I want to see some evidence. So in the Locken case, for example, we had evidence. We did the forensic audit to determine the breadth and the depth, the amount of money and so on. But we knew that embezzlement had taken place. Other than the Zer Smith case, which is confined to one particular person, there's no evidentiary basis for proceeding with a forensic audit. And I would oppose spending $100,000 for a fishing expedition.
Well, again, all I can say is ongoing investigation. The sheriff has requested it because at this particular time we need more information. We will not comment on an ongoing investigation.
And I would say we would not do a forensic audit.
Madam Chair, I'm on the request list for speaking, so if they're just going to keep disagreeing, could someone else get some comments in?
Please go on. Thank you.
Yes, I think that I have Robin Leary.
Madam Chair, one of the things I wanted to state is I think it's unfortunate that there's all this doubt about what may or may not have happened or be happening. Unfortunately, we have a lot of really good employees in the county that are under this shadow because there are some things that we simply don't know. I can appreciate Chair Smyer's comments, but sometimes you have to have the sunlight so that everyone can be confident in the conclusion. I don't like spending $100,000 either. But at the end of the day, if we don't do this, we're not going to know. And it's going to continue to be a question. What bothers me the most is so many times during the last year, the finance and budget members have asked staff from Human Services questions. And while we get words, some of the questions were continually just talked around. And frankly, it's a lot like our debates on this issue. I think it's something we need to do whether we want to or not. I also think a point needs to be made that if some irregularities and thefts have been happening, they're also stealing money from our clients and our potential clients, that we could be using that money for the good of the individuals that are on waiting lists. Or also there's the morale of our other county employees who are on partial layoff or their positions have been cut. because all of a sudden we simply don't have the funding. I know the COVID has precipitated a lot of this, but frankly, we were looking at cuts in some places, I think, before that, simply because it costs more to do things today. So while I don't like having to do this, and I think it's necessary, so I would encourage you to vote. And frankly, I hope we don't have too many more amendments to amendments, because it really drowns the issue and it makes it even more difficult than it has to be.
Are there any other comments?
Yeah, I have
Did
a
we
few.
hear-
Supervisor Gatlin would like to speak.
Supervisor Gatlin, please.
I completely lost what I wanted to say, so thank you.
Supervisor Anton,
Supervisor Anton, please.
thank you. My comment is that I believe we owe the employees who are under this dark cloud clarification as to their situation, whether they did or did not commit a fraud or whatever we call it. I think we owe them a clarification that we cannot get without an audit. I would not like to go through life if I were in that position and someone said, well, what did you really do? We need to get to the bottom of it for the sake of our employees, if for no other reason, but I do have other reasons too, but I think that's a big one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, this is Tim Sullivan. I would just remind the chair that at this time, what we should be discussing is the amendment as amendment and whether or not there's going to be ultimately a vote on that.
Thank you for bringing us back to that. Again, that's the longer version.
Chair Bates, Chair Bates. Supervisor Schneider, seconded by DeLuca, to postpone till October 6th, but she set it kind of aside until after the sheriff spoke. So I don't know if you still want to check with her to see if she still wants to.
Yes, I was just going to do that. And so Supervisor Schneider, you made a motion. It was seconded to postpone this issue. And it was based on the fact that you felt we didn't have access to the information that we needed to make a decision. Are you feeling comfortable with the information that you have, or are you wishing to move that motion forward?
I believe we also wanted to hear from Catherine Schaaf, Administrator Schaaf.
Catherine Schroff, I'm sure she must be on the line.
I am.
And do you have a question for her specifically?
From her perspective, is this necessary?
When you say, is this necessary from my perspective, I think the is this necessary meaning the overall forensic audit. Am I correct in that?
Yes.
One of the things that we have done internally is had conversation about when and if such an audit would be required. And at this point, I would go back to the comment of typically we have the basis of wanting more information regarding a specific action and identifying if there is further activity that would be suspicious. And it goes back to what Chair Smyer said about that evidentiary basis and having that. And I believe that understanding what it is or knowing what that basis actually puts the county from the perspective of knowing what it's voting on and why in a better position. I understand some of the comments that are being made because there has been a lot of confusion and doubt and concern that has been raised. Having specific information about the specific work and outcomes that are desired from any scope of this type of engagement are better off defined before you make the decision to actually expend the funds. And so in some ways, not having that at this point is somewhat problematic. It's hard to say yes or no because at this point, I have no information that would demonstrate that it's absolutely required. Because from where I am today, I have no information that shows specific actions because I'm not privy to the information that was talked about earlier. And so it's very difficult to opine on something when I don't know what the basis is for the request in the first place. And I know that's a non-answer, and that is the best answer that I can give you at this time.
Thank you for that information.
Thank you. That answers my question.
There's perhaps again.
And I don't need to postpone till October 6th.
You don't need to postpone till October 6th. And so we're removing that request from our agenda. Thank you. Going back to the amendment for the resolution, I think we've had a lot of different points of view, and I hope that you're ready to vote at this time. Any other?
Supervisor Bates, I haven't had a chance to speak to anything beyond my opening remarks.
Supervisor,
I do have my hand raised too.
Well, I was looking for you to go through chat.
I'm sorry, I don't know what that means.
Well, I'm sorry that you didn't, but we'll recognize you now.
Thank you. I guess I just want to remind everybody, a lot has been said about myself and Supervisor Beckfield, what we took and what our motives are. Take us out of the equation. Let's just take us out of the equation for a minute. You have emails from the sheriff, the top law enforcement person in the county. You have an email from the district attorney, who's the top legal enforcement person in the county, and from the treasurer, the top money handling person in the county, all recommending their recommendation for a forensic audit. Then we have the opinion from Brock Guyan, who is a lead auditor for the county, or works for the county through his firm Clifton Larson Allen, who stated that this absolutely is a situation that qualifies for a forensic audit. Those are the experts in this area, not the county board, not coming from two supervisors. These are people, elected officials with areas of expertise, as well as a certified accountant, that are recommending to this body that we should have a forensic audit. If that doesn't tell you everything you need to know, I'm not sure what else is. You can split hairs about how we got here, two supervisors, motivations, the method on how we arrived here. That's all opinion. A lot has been said about it. I'm not really going to go into it. The reality is these experts are saying Eau Claire County should do this. So to the other 28 supervisors that are on the call, this is something that we should do, and we owe the taxpayers of Eau Claire County. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak?
Chair Bates, I do have about 6 supervisors that would like to speak, starting with Supervisor Christopherson.
Thank you. Supervisor Christopherson, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with a lot of sentiments that's been said during this discussion, and I applaud Supervisor Stalgis for bringing this forward. It did not sit well with me to spend $100,000 on a forensic audit. However, with this amendment, I feel like it may be money well spent. For as long as I've been on the board, the Department of Human Services budget has been of concern, and I think we may find value in an audit separate from this forensic audit. I do also share Supervisor Gatlin's statement that the services that this department serves is extremely valuable. And as I've said before, I think that we may need to look at giving them more of an abundant budget in the future because of everything that they address. I would like to also applaud Supervisor Maury for his speaking that the department is looking at turning the ship around. I think that there's all good value here. However, I think that an audit is what our constituents are asking for, and I think that there may be value there. So I support this amendment. I do have a question for Catherine Schroff. In regards to this amendment, I feel like she was speaking mostly to the resolution in regards to the forensic audit. Would she find value in the the other part of the audit that is being proposed in this amendment?
So when you say the other part of the audit,
Are
that
you
would be the program review, is that correct?
That is correct.
I think that any organization can use program reviews on a regular basis to identify areas for potential improvement. From the timing perspective and based on everything that is going forward, if a review of the programs and the programs that are being provided is what is required, that may have value. I do know that the state of Wisconsin, through many of the programs that Human Services provides, does regular audits of the programs. And so I am assuming then that the audit would be only on programs that are currently not audited by the state from the perspective of services. Is that a correct statement?
Supervisor Stelgis? Supervisor Stelgis, was that your?
No, I would not make that assumption.
And so
I would assume that regarding our accounting policies, particularly, I think that would be evaluated independently. The control portions would be evaluated independently, and the delivery programs. You know, if I were doing it, I'd look at the big hitters, and if the state is doing it, then you could incorporate the state findings. But at least I, as a supervisor, have never seen anything that looks like an evaluation of our, you know, the effectiveness of our program delivery. So I'd like to see that included.
Thank you.
But I guess the way the amendment is written, I think I would, you know, it would kind of be up to finance and budget to provide the specific details to whoever is selected as auditor.
Thank you.
We're talking about two separate audits here now. One is a financial audit and one is a program audit. And the state already does do audits on programs that they contribute to. Are you wanting us to repeat that? Or did I hear you say that you would incorporate the state findings into the audit?
I think that if the state actually evaluates outcomes and sort of the cost benefit, then that could be included as part of an audit report. But I would, you know, maybe a good idea to welcome another set of eyes on those things. I just wouldn't accept verbatim what a state person says. We want complete independence.
Well,
at least that's my view of it.
Unfortunately, we don't have complete independence as the federal state
agency finds that the state's data is really good, then they can incorporate that into their report.
Is a dime cable on the line?
No, aren't we supposed to be acting on something?
I was looking for information in regard to what you were asking. And that was in regard to the program audit. But Diane on the line?
I will unmute her, but she has a lot of background noise.
I'm here. You'd have to repeat the question.
I guess the question that seems to be asked here prior to this vote, and what a program audit would look like, and if the program audit information would be used as part of that, exploration of the effectiveness and so forth. So
You broke up just a little bit, so I'll do the best I can in responding. We have, for our received program audits. And in terms of meeting requirements and being effective and efficient, if you're talking about another type of credentialing of program auditing, we would have to search out to be able to have some sort of overall program audit by some sort of commission for that.
And so they have some information, it would appear, but not everything that maybe you would be looking for. All right, are there any other, do I have anybody else on the list?
Chair Bates, we do have 10 more comments, starting with Supervisor DeLuca.
Please go ahead, Supervisor DeLuca.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In regards to the amendment as amended, I struggle tonight with my decision. I want to make sure that if there is theft or fraud, that we find it. But it seems like as I listen to the discussion tonight, I've read all the documents that were sent to me in regards to this Zur case. And I'm hearing all these different things in the meeting tonight that I never knew about. And I struggle to make a decision when I don't have all the information. I would like to find out, where are the dollars going to come from in the Stelgis amendment as amended? Will they be coming from the contingency fund or not?
And I think that question goes back to the maker of the resolution and the Finance and Budget Committee. The resolution comes out of Finance and Budget. Where have you identified the monies coming from to do the forensic audit? And I would ask the chair of the committee.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. The resolution did not specify where the funding would come from. If this were going to occur in 2020, I can envision several different places where there may be some unspent dollars, but we would have to examine it. I disagree with Chairman Smyer that it needs to be a 2/3 vote. I think we need to come back to determine if it's going to come out of contingency. I don't think we've made that decision yet. And until we spend more time looking at it, I don't think we can make that decision. And the other piece of it is that even though the resolution indicates $100,000, it's my understanding, and I think that Supervisor Beckfield has already spoken to this, that it would be much more likely to be more like 30,000 if we were just doing a forensic audit, or the 25,000 if we proceed with Supervisor Stelgis's amendment. So it's not included, it's not incorporated in this resolution. And I think that something would have to come back to the county board to set aside the dollars. That would be a secondary step.
Then I would like to make a motion to postpone to October 6th to verify where the money will come from for this amendment as amended.
You've heard the motion. Is there a second to that motion?
I would second that, McKinney.
A second from McKinney? A discussion? This is an up or down vote. No discussion.
No discussion, it's just a vote.
Thank you. So ask for a roll call.
The roll call vote, yes, is to postpone until October 6th county board meeting. A no is to not postpone. Gibson,
No.
McKinney, Supervisor McKinney,
Unmute.
That's a yes.
I'm unmuted, yes.
thank you. Supervisor Knight,
Supervisor Knight?
no.
No.
Thank you. Supervisor Pagonis,
Yes.
What?
Anton, Supervisor Anton, I think he might have said no. Did anyone else hear him?
No.
Yes.
He said yes, thank you. Zook,
No.
Chilson,
No.
Stelgis,
No.
Maury,
Yes.
Supervisor Maury.
He said yes.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Coffee,
Yes.
Henning,
No.
Bates,
Yes.
Russell,
Yes.
Gatlin,
Yes.
Smyer, Hambick Boyle, and Buck Boyle,
Yes.
Neiman,
Yes.
Dunning,
Yes.
Supervisor Dunning,
Yes.
Wilkie,
No.
Anderson,
Yes.
Beckfield,
No.
Schneider,
Yes.
Supervisor Schneider,
Yes.
Leary,
No.
DeLuca,
Yes.
Jansen,
No.
Schroffnagel,
Yes.
Roberts,
Yes.
Frank,
Yes.
and Christopherson.
Yes.
10 noes, 19 yeses.
And so the motion to postpone passes to the next meeting. So with, I will turn the chair back over to esteemed Chair McSmyer.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda, I believe, is File 68.
Authorizing to remove 1.5 FTE Administrative Associate 3 in the County Clerk's Office listed on the bridge plan.
Motion,
Leary,
Supervisor Leary moves.
DeLuca seconds.
Supervisor DeLuca seconds. Thank you. Supervisor Pagonis with the background explanation.
Thank you, Chairman Smyer. So the county clerk office has 3.5 staff in it. In March, individual Cynthia retired, and so I believe the county clerk, who can weigh in on this, believed that it was just automatically going to be put out there to get filled, and it was put on the bridge plan. And I'm not sure how much, whether that she knew it was put on the bridge plan, but it came as a surprise. We are in an election year. there have been an unprecedented amount of absentee ballots that the county clerk is responsible for the county enumerations of the ballots and the processing of the ballots. And so to not have that 0.5 individual represents an enormous hardship for the department. As I said, it's a very small department. So we're asking that this be removed from the bridge plan so that the HR could recruit for this as quickly as possible. Throughout the year, the position is about 17,000. It'll probably be less than 10,000 to complete out the year, but we need to move as quickly as possible because I think everyone's aware that the election's just 49 days away. So I would encourage your support on this.
Supervisor Pagonis, there's a note on our agenda that your committee met regarding this September 14th. So I'm assuming, would you report out the vote on it from your committee?
It was 5-0.
Thank you. Is there anyone who wishes to address this file? I hear none. Supervisors, we will now vote on file 68, authorizing removing 1.5 FTE Administrative Associate, 3, the County Clerk's Office listed on the bridge. All those, please unmute. And all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed by nay.
Nay.
We have one nay. The chair judges that this item has passed. Thank you. The next item on our agenda, and I have to ask, I'm a little confused here, so I have to ask for clarification. Supervisor Pagonis, what's the difference between 45 and 71?
45 were the, well, let me start over. 071 are grants and gifts to the sheriff's department. 45 was to departments that were not the sheriff's department.
Okay, and we did pass 45, correct?
Yes, we did.
Okay, thank you. So, Clerk Lewis, would you please read file 71?
Approval of the 2020 gifts, grants, and/or donations to Eau Claire County.
Thank you. Motion?
I'll move. Schroffnagel.
Moved by Supervisor Schroffnagel, second.
Humbug Boyle.
By Humbug Boyle, thank you. Are there any questions or is there any discussion regarding this file?
I would like to address it, Chairman Smyer.
Please. Oh, thank you for reminding me.
It's fine. So once again, these are funds that have already come into the county and they are a result of grants and specific requests. So what we're doing tonight is a bookkeeping resolution. And so just to address some of the things on there. So for example, there's a $58,000 grant specifically for COVID. The funds have been spent on PPE, on a disinfecting robot in the jail, and there's 21,000 set aside in case any personnel in the sheriff's department comes down with COVID or is exposed to COVID and has to quarantine. And so the 21,000 is for overtime to make up that position. There are three things regarding SWAT. The SWAT team, the Eau Claire area SWAT team is one of 8 in the state. There are 3 counties that are participating, and Eau Claire County is the fiscal agent. So all 3 of those grants that came in are specifically for the SWAT-related, SWAT-aligned programs. And I'll give you an example. For example, there was a ballistic vest and a helmet that went to a law enforcement officer in the city of Altoona, who's one of the participants in the program. There is a crisis phone that's used for negotiating. And there was a video equipment that is used for emergency management and alerts. So these are all things that are integral into what the SWAT team does. And as I said, Eau Claire County is the fiscal agent. There are 2 grants that are associated with the drug task force. One of them I don't even think should be on here. It's a internal transfer of funds. That's the forfeiture funds. And the other just for routine activities within the drug trafficking.
Supervisor, do you wish to make a change in the resolution?
Oh, I do not. Just want it to be, it's bookkeeping. It's just to adjust the budget as presented. Let's just vote on it.
Okay.
The money's been received, and except for the 21,000, it's all been spent.
Well, that makes it a foregone conclusion, probably. Okay.
That's what I think.
Yes. So is there any question or is there any discussion regarding file 70? I hear not.
Supervisor Cronk has a question.
Supervisor Cronk, please.
Thank you, and I do appreciate Supervisor Pagonis's breakdown of that. The reason this came about as separate was because I had questions, especially regarding the forfeiture funds that Supervisor Pagonis was speaking about, and I still don't feel like I have answers to those. I guess I asked the question last time and it was referred back to committee, and I still don't have answers as to how those forfeiture funds are broken down and where is that reporting, what are they specifically, and where is that logging, and is that public information, as well as just some overall information. I think I made a comment last time about the concern, nationally and locally about sort of the militarization of our departments. And the question about we still don't have information really specifically that the public has been asking for about the high intensity drug trafficking area designation, despite it being on several agendas on the CJCC as well as the executive agendas. And really there hasn't been any presentation. So I'm waiting. I'm not sure why that hasn't happened. But I do believe that a lot of this is related. So that was hence my question, if I want to be voting, I want it to be voting separately. And I do want to understand what I'm voting on. So unfortunately, I will be voting no, because I don't have my questions answered as to the breakdown of these forfeiture funds specifically. So thank
The
you.
forfeiture funds, just let me repeat, the forfeiture funds were an internal transfer. That's not what the topic of this resolution is. This resolution is a housekeeping resolution. So I pathetic to Supervisor Cronk wanting to have more information, but this is not the time. This is not the method of doing it. The transfer has already occurred. It's an internal transfer within the department that should probably be going through its oversight committee. So I think that your questions would be better served if you went to the oversight committee and asked for a presentation regarding the specific questions you have. It's not, this resolution is basically to acknowledge the transfer and to accept the grants that have already been received and utilized.
Supervisor Pagonis, when you say oversight committee, do you mean judiciary and law?
Yes, I do.
Yes. So the answer to your question, Supervisor Cronk, is to take the request to the oversight committee, judiciary and law, and let it originate there and then come out onto the board floor. Supervisor Wilkie could probably respond to that.
We'd be happy to place it on the agenda, but I would appreciate Supervisor Cronk maybe shooting me an email specifically, specifically what questions she wants answered.
Okay. Supervisor Cronk, did that respond to your request?
Get the Judiciary and Law Committee referencing this, but I will do so. So I appreciate the invite.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there any other further discussion or other question? I hear none. Supervisors, are you prepared to vote? You are prepared to vote on file 71. All those in favor, please unmute first. All those in favor of file 71 indicate by saying aye.
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 All those opposed by nay.
Hey.
Nay.
Nay.
I counted 3 nays. The chair rules that the file passes. Thank you very much. The last item on our agenda is appointments. Should be able to do this fairly quickly. These appointments were confirmed by the Committee on Administration. So I'm appointing to the City County Board of Health, Mark Kading, replacing Kerry Strode, and to the Library Planning Committee, Allison Jones, from the Library Director of Altoona Library, Charlene Conradi, the Library Director of Fall Creek Library, Leslie LaRose, Library Director of Augusta, Pam Westby, Library Director of Eau Claire, Stella Pagonis, County Board Supervisor, Chris Humboldt Boyle, County Board Supervisor, John Thompson, IFLS Representative. This is not the full contingent of the Library Planning Committee, but we're trying to move this forward with all due speed and care. So I have made these appointments. I ask for a motion from this board accepting those appointments.
This is Nancy Coffey. I would so move.
Moved by Coffey, second by
I'll second it, Nick. Zoe Roberts.
Zoe, thank you. Second by Supervisor Roberts. Is there any question or any discussion regarding these appointments? Thank you. All those in favor of the appointment as stated, please indicate by saying aye.
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 You didn't all unmute, but that's okay. Sorry about that. Those opposed by nay. Okay, those appointments are confirmed. Thank you. We have now reached the end of our agenda. Supervisors, thank you for your great patience this evening as we tried to sort our way through some thorny territory. So we will see you all again in October.
Good night, everyone.
This program was brought to you by a cooperation between Newsworks and Eau Claire County.